All right, are you
Recording
ready?
in progress.
Ooh, okay, on air it says. Well, enough of that. Welcome everyone to the City of Oregon City work session for Tuesday, June the 10th. And we are so happy that everyone is here. So how about roll call, please?
Mayor Denise McGriff.
Present.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
Commissioner Scott Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
And Commissioner Mike Mitchell is not in attendance tonight.
Commissioner Mitchell is excused because he is attending the AWWA conference on our behalf and South Fork Water Board. All right, so next thing on our agenda is next thing on our agenda is general business. And we have an update on the Portland General Electric PGE pilot program for electric vehicle charging stations in the city right away. That is a mouthful right there. And that would be the amazing Josh Wheeler and
Okay, I am Josh Wheeler. I'm the Assistant City Engineer in the Public Works Department. And I'm here tonight with Adam Reese of PGE. And about a year ago, you were given a presentation about a pilot program for EV charging in the right-of-way. Dante Posadas was here at that time leading that. I've taken that over. Since that time, there have been changes to the program. Before there were requirements where the city had to have some buy-in. Now that buy-in is no longer needed. It's more just a permitting process. And
what
so,
does that mean?
What's that?
What does that mean?
I'm going to explain that through a presentation.
Okay.
Actually, Adam is.
All right.
And so what we're going to do tonight is give you a brief recap of what EV charging is. We're going to tell you the differences between last year and this year, and then we're going to show you where we're proposing it, and then we'll open it up for any questions or comments.
Okay, so you're saying we, or are you saying they?
Well, I'm saying that me as a representative of the department is going to have PGE say everything, but if there's anything on the permitting or why certain locations, well, it might be both of us. Yeah. We've been working together on this, but yes, it is taken care of by them. And let's see if this works.
So explain why there's no buy-in.
Okay.
Sure. So, first of all, thank you for having me back. It's been about a year, but I really appreciate you all taking the time to talk with me again. We are in the final stretch of this program. So I'm Adam Reese. I'm the program manager of the pole charging program for PGE. And so just a quick recap of the program. So PGE is installing level 2 chargers on poles in underserved communities. For the remainder of 2025 is when we're going to be doing the new installs. And then after 2025, our funding ceases for new installs and we shift to maintenance and operation only. So this is the last 6 months for being able to do any new installations for this program. And for underserved communities, we're using House Bill 2165, which defines it, which is a variation of, it could be any combination of a high percentage of multifamily, high percentage of renters, low income, BIPOC, rural, frontier, and I think tribal. So, and we can share that, the actual House bill if that is helpful. But that's what we use to look for specific areas that would meet the needs of this program. It's centered around those different criteria. And then also there's a very extensive process of vetting the poles as being viable for a charger. And I think I covered that in our last time, but I can answer any questions about that as well. And this is an example of what it looks like. This is one of our chargers in Milwaukee. It's very straightforward. You just go up, park underneath it. There's a QR code. The driver would have an app on their smartphone. They scan that QR code. It brings down a 25-foot cord, and they're able to plug in and charge until their car is charged up. And then when they're finished, they unplug and it retracts back up. So it's very low impact on the road that it's plugged into.
Here's the answer to that question.
Yeah, so the main difference is we realized last year that having a formal contract was a barrier with a lot of the cities that we were working with. And we do have formal contracts with Gresham, Milwaukee, and Salem, but These are on PGE-owned poles, they're in the public right-of-way, and really with the contract, we weren't asking for much. I think at the time, really, it was just asking for help with communications, striping, and signage. And so at this point, we are no longer asking for any financial obligation from cities. It's really just a collaboration. We want to make sure that we're selecting locations that work for the city and for your neighborhoods, but also meet the needs of a viable pole location and meet our criteria for underserved communities. So there's no obligation at all financially. And then the flow, just real quick. So we shifted over to a letter of intent that just explains who we are, what our program is. We work with you on location approval. If we are able to find some locations that work for the city, then we would go into permitting. And then we will do all outreach to areas within a quarter mile of each pole location, letting people know that these chargers are going to be installed there. After they're installed, we'll send out another round of communication to let people know that they're there, and then we'll take on maintenance and operation. And we'd still like to put up striping as a safety measure to let people know where they need to park. And then just signage that essentially says EV charging, but there's no requirement to restrict the parking. It doesn't have to be EV only.
Now, the presentation last year, there were 5 locations that were being looked at. That has expanded. There was a combination of myself, some of my staff, as well as Vance and his staff that went out and looked at all the locations that PG proposed. We came back with ones that could work, ones that were a maybe, and ones that, that wouldn't work for various reasons. And then PGE vetted those to what works for them. And so we're getting ready to show you what we're proposing, which you may have comment on here in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
So there's 8 locations. Most of them are in the northern part, and then there's the one down in Barkley Hills. And we do have individual photos. We tried to cram them all in to keep this short. But these are all areas that would be, we think would be fantastic for pole chargers.
And that's the end of our presentation. And so I think we would ask for if you have a desire for us to go forward and do the permitting, and if you might have any other questions or comments on the locations.
Gentlemen?
So the plugs that are going in, are they the J1772 plugs, or are they Max, or what types of?
These are, the company's called EVSE LLC. They also have a name called Control Module Inc. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but they're one of the most widely used pole charger units around the country. I think there's like 500 in San Diego and then around 1,000 in Los Angeles. So they've been really successful so far. We've been working really closely with Seattle as well. I can provide more detail if you want. I can provide some more spec sheets on it.
Oh yeah, I was just curious kind of what's going on. And then one of the things that I've noticed, having intermittently driven an EV, is sometimes these like third-party managed chargers are not well maintained. They don't work. The plugs don't work. And so I'm kind of curious if you're implementing this in other cities, like what that's looked like, what response time has been for chargers that just don't work.
Yeah, for sure. We monitor them regularly. We actually have a third-party maintenance contract with a company that monitors daily for uptime. If there's any issues, then we have a 2-day SLA for them to go out and do some type of diagnostic to see what's wrong with it. If it requires, we'll just replace the whole charger. If it's something we can fix quickly, then we'll try to do that. But we also do a regular quarterly site visit to make sure there hasn't been any vandalism or there aren't any other issues, that it looks well maintained. So PGE takes it very seriously to keep these operational and in good condition.
Okay. And then what about people who might be using these chargers for extended period of times? I'm going to park here, plug my car, and I'm going to leave it for 12 plus hours.
So PGE this year implemented idle fees. So once the car is finished charging, they have a 10-minute grace period, and then they'll start getting charged 10 cents a minute.
Okay.
So this is free?
It is not free. We actually just changed, so it's 12 cents per kWh, which is comparable to what you would get in your own home. And then we're also just went live with a low-income program that we've tied in with our income qualified bill discount program. So they get a 20% discount. If they're part of the IQBD program, they'll also get a 20% discount on their charging.
And then is there clear signage, or like one of my initial thoughts is if somebody's experiencing an issue with a charger, to be transparent, I don't want them reaching out to the city like, hey, this isn't working, what do I do about it?
Yeah, in one of the photos you can see, so we have our placard that has details and who to call and how to use the charger. We're actually in the process of improving that. We're also adding a way to get to a Spanish translation as well. But we're always looking for ways of making it more visible. We're actually adding on stickers that say PGE, and we want to make sure, because these things don't really look like. So you can see that.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a traditional charger.
Yeah, so the charger, I mean, if you don't know what you're looking at, it kind of just looks like another piece of comm equipment. So we're always looking for ways to improve visibility and let people know that they're there, and if they have questions, who to contact and that kind of thing. So, it's an ever-changing process. So if it's not working well, we'll definitely do things to try to improve it.
Okay, thank you.
Adam, anything? Rocky?
Not all those pictures are actual sites that we're using, right?
Not those, but the other ones he did.
Yeah, no, that's one of the Milwaukee locations.
Well,
Those are our 8 proposed sites there, and if
those
you'd like
aren't
to see the
Milwaukee
pictures.
locations, those are all Oregon City.
No, the previous pictures will Milwaukee, just to show you what one
What
looks
it
like.
Looks like, yeah, we
Scroll
don't,
back,
yeah.
I didn't hear.
scroll back.
Scroll back.
That's the old Jackson campus high school. That's Monroe Street above Lateret Park.
Yeah, you guys didn't get this, but I sent a picture of one that I took in Salem.
You can tell right from the
to
pictures.
Staff
So
to show
that's right across
an
the street
actual
from the house.
example. But
Just questioning, I don't know why they're not Milwaukee.
Well, no, this is our Washington Street location. I can actually show you on Google Maps where it is. It is next to a school though.
Okay.
But we do not currently have any installed in Oregon City.
Okay, so
Not by
here are my questions. How does the criteria apply to Oregon City? Because you're saying, underserved, this, that, and the other thing, and, nobody in their city wants them to be pegged as all of these things. Some of them are, I feel a little sensitive about it. So how is that determined that we meet that criteria?
Yeah, so unfortunately, this slideshow does not have, we do provide data on
Right.
each location in our other, and I can make sure to get that for you, Mayor, for each location, but we're looking at primarily census tract data that pulls multifamily. We looked very much at multifamily percentage and renter percentage, because those are the folks that can't install a charger if they want to. And that's also supplemented by some of our internal PGE data that we get from customers. So if they already own, we look at how many EVs are in the area already and things like that.
So you have an idea about that?
We do, yeah. And it is updated pretty regularly. So we look at those kind of things. But also just, we've looked at cities that don't have many chargers available. We would love to put them out in places like Malala, or I'm working with Silverton. Silverton just signed up a couple weeks ago. Willamina is another example where there's just no chargers in their area. And so it's a way, primarily we are putting them there for the people that live in that community, because we want them to feel empowered to buy an EV if they don't have access to a charger. But also if people are passing through and they own an EV, that it's a way for them to charge as well. So it's a pilot. The plan right now is to have it run through 2031. But beyond that, we'll talk with the city and PG will talk internally and figure out what would be next steps. But we want to see what happens. We'll put these out and see if it helps stimulate usage.
Well, I could see, the random person, rather than coming into the neighborhoods, they would charge at a commercial site, somewhere
Yeah.
that's not, let's say you live on X Street, one of those streets, and you see this strange car that you've never seen in your neighborhood before, and you're going like, well, who the heck is that? So the one in Salem that I took the picture of has a sign that says EV, this space, local parking restrictions apply. I mean, that was what my friend who lives one door down from where this is. So that would be something. So I ran this by a couple of people. I live in the McLoughlin neighborhood, and most of those addresses that you have, except Sebastian Way and Berkeley Hills. So when you went out with the staff, did they tell you that you were within, some of those are within our conservation district, which is a historic district?
I think you mentioned it the last
I
time
did,
I
and
came out.
that's one of the things I wanted to make sure you were
Yeah.
aware of that. So the core of our neighborhood basically has somewhat limited parking. And one of the concerns that I was told was, and I was supposed to bring it up tonight, was that we already have constrained parking. You're saying that anybody could park in them, you know, sort of defeats the purpose of having a space for an EV if somebody else is in there. This picture I sent to staff had somebody's garbage can in it, which wasn't really great, but I think that's only on garbage day. So I think my concern is, you know, about the removal of possibly already scarce parking. Number two, what is the visual impact of this being in our conservation district? That would be another thing, because it is in the right of way, and I don't know, I was trying to look up in our code, I know we have some thing in there that talks about review of stuff that's going on in the right of way that may impact. It may not be a big impact, but I would also like to recommend that before we move this forward, if we're going to move it forward, that you maybe come to a McLoughlin neighborhood meeting. I think that the neighbors would be interested in this, and you would get some instant feedback from them. The one in Sebastian Way, I'm not sure which, that might be, there's only one, and then you have one in Berkeley Hills. I'm familiar with 418 Berkeley Hills. I didn't get the chance to go see all of these sites to just sort of scope it out. I got about half of them. So that would kind of be just my concerns. And then the other concern I had, which is why I asked you about who's paying for this. One of the other people said, well, if it's being subsidized, I don't really want to pay for that, for somebody to use a charger. I said, well, I'm pretty sure that they have to pay. The one that I looked at in Salem it hadn't dropped down, but I mean, I could see where you would use that. So I don't know what equivalent usage of what you said is the 12 kWh. I don't really know what that dollar number is, what somebody would be charging for 2 hours or whatever it is. And you have one, so I don't know. Because you have a charger?
I don't have one currently, but I've driven one intermittently. I've used one for quite a while.
I mean,
it just has to do with like how much, think of it like miles per gallon,
Yeah,
right? It's just how much is going
I
in
have
the
a number
battery.
of people in the McLoughlin neighborhood that I know have installed the plug-in at their home because they have an electric vehicle. But those are the people that I know that have them. I mean, they already drive an electric vehicle, so. I know that some of the new regulations that the state is pursuing is saying that, you know, we're gonna have lots of people who are renters who have, you know, electric vehicle chargers or need an electric vehicle charger. So I don't know if we've seen that come to fruition in terms of the new apartment complexes that we have in Oregon City. So I don't know whether those developers put them in. I know the one that's on 7th and Harrison, I asked the developer whether he had a place for people to charge vehicles, and he looked at me like I was crazy. So I said the answer is no, because I went to his parking lot. He has ADA space, but he does not have any place for people to charge a car. So that would be just, you know, just a couple of suggestions. I think, you know, that we're trying to make, you know, these available, and I didn't think they were, you know, having seen one in real life, I didn't think it was unattractive. I knew exactly, I mean, when I saw it, I knew exactly what it was. So, because we had seen a picture of one before. So, I guess in terms of visual appearance, they're pretty innocuous. These are dark gray, so they kind of, you know, they would blend in with our gray environment. Not today though, but generally they would be not seen.
Thank you. I just have a few questions. And this is kind of building off of what you said, and I just want to confirm that in these locations, I think we all share a concern over the scarce parking, especially in the areas where that's been highlighted. If a regular internal combustion engine vehicle were to park in that spot, they would not be fine. They would still have the ability to park there, or is it cordoned off specifically for the use of charging?
Don't you think that would be our regulation? That
Yeah.
we would say, like they do in Salem here, you know, that this is restricted for, if we want to do that, obviously. I don't think that that's really, they don't have any governance over our parking regulations.
Yeah, we leave it completely up to you. Right now, the only city that does do only EV is Milwaukee. Gresham.
Obviously Salem. 'Cause-
Yeah, well, so Salem, they put up signage that labels it as EV, but they do not restrict it. So they do say if there's current restrictions for that neighborhood, then that kind of takes precedent, but they do not restrict parking. Gresham does not have an enforcement division, so they couldn't restrict it. But it's completely up to you. If your city wanted to restrict it, that's fine. We don't require it. And we understand it. To us, it's kind of a cost benefit analysis where we just want to get the chargers up, and if they are blocked, and it becomes a consistent issue, then we would work with you all on how we would address it.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I understand the jurisdiction over parking regulations, but the reason I asked is because this really is a pro forma presentation that we're receiving, and we're not approving anything, and so that's the reason why I wanted to get it on the record that I think that's a concern that we all share.
I think there would be, I'm sure they would appreciate if we gave a blessing, so to speak, but we'd have to do that in a regular public meeting. So, once we get some public input about, hey, you think this is a great idea? They want to do this? It's not going to cost you anything? Just ask.
Can you talk a little bit about what has changed in between the last presentation and now as it relates to the city involvement? I know there was something about us no longer doing the signage. What was that process, and can you talk a little bit more about what came out of that?
Yeah, so we're running out of time, unfortunately, where we have 6 months to get chargers installed and get cities involved with the program. And so ultimately we decided to move away from formal contracts just because of the level of involvement that it usually requires with government, where lawyers have to get involved, and in some cases you don't need city council approval. So we were trying to make it as easy as possible for cities to say yes. And so ultimately we decided, since we weren't really asking for any financial obligation other than maybe doing striping and signage, it was just easier to shift to a letter of intent and then working with the city on locations where we won't put them up if you all say no, but we still want to get buy-in and we want to get approval, but just not in a formal contract.
Okay, and then that deadline came from the House bill?
It's the program
or
is
from rulemaking, or?
It's just the way that the funding was set up. It has to
Okay.
be done by the end of 2025.
Okay, thank you.
And the way it would work if we went forward would be that before the old program, it required an agreement that the city commission agreed to. It no longer requires that agreement. The only thing that's required is, because it's going to be in the right of way, they have to get a permit to work in the right of way. And even though they're a franchise utility that have either a license or a franchise agreement, in this case, it's outside of what that agreement says. So we would treat them like any permittee in the right of way, and they'd have their standard form and fee and to be able to be there.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to this at all. I just, like I said, I just like to see a little bit more, feedback.
I think it's clever. I think that, you're literally tying in charging into existing infrastructure, not having to build separate charging units. Visual impact is minimal. You're not having to set up, again, like separate charging stations. And I think that one of the things that holds people back from using EVs is just access to infrastructure. And I think that, I think we're seeing trends that this is the direction things are going. And yeah, I think it's a clever idea.
Are we at all interested in looking at signing this so that it can be available? I think, again, it's going to depend on the location where there's maybe heavier on-street parking as opposed to an area where there's not. I've been on Sebastian Way several times and I was thinking, wow, okay, they don't do a lot of on-street parking on that street. It's all single family in that particular area. I'm not trying to think. Barkley Hills Drive, I'm trying to think.
I think what's nice about this with the implementation of idle fees, there's actual incentive to move your car because nobody wants to pay 10 cents a minute.
Well, I'm talking about somebody who doesn't have a car that's charging and they just plop in there and somebody comes along and wants.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So, yeah, that's valid, and I think I'd be curious to just kind of see how it goes, and then if we feel we need to look at some type of signage or restricting, like kind of go that route. But I would more be inclined to let's kind of see how things go and then address it if it needs to be.
I think it's, like I said, a case-by-case basis. I'd want to look at 5th, the 7th, and maybe the one that's on, I don't think on 16th, but maybe 9th is kind of, I'm thinking 9th is, to think of what my President Cross Street is there. I think that might be around Harrison. And they already have like one side of the street that is not, it doesn't allow parking on it, period, because it's very narrow up in that particular area.
They're all pretty close together, so if one was taken, they could always try to go to another one. And I think really the goal of the program, these should be people that live in the area. You know, for the most part, if somebody's not from the area, they're gonna be looking for a fast charger because they're gonna wanna be in and out. And fast chargers are drastically.
This is not a fast charger?
These are level 2s, so they take hours. And so they really are designed for people to be able to plug in when they're home or they're nearby or something. One of them's right next to a church, which is fantastic because somebody can plug in while they're going to church.
Getting their religion there.
For sure. So they really are more for people that are from the area. And if there's somebody's, visiting a friend or something, they can plug in and stay.
It was interesting. I was at Walgreens the one that's in Gladstone, just on the other side of the bridge. And it was after 9 p.m. and there were 2 cars parked there on the charger. And I went and did something else, came back about an hour later, and they were still, so I'm pretty sure they must have been there overnight. I mean, I was just kind of looking at it, I thought, we'd leave their car here in this parking lot. But just observing. Thoughts?
I would prefer that when we begin this program that we make it clear that it's just open parking for everyone. And I'll repeat what I've said before, which is that if there's one thing I know about poor people, it's that they're always looking for a place to charge their EV. And I just worry about the way that we approach these. I understand why we're trying to get at underserved communities, but I realize it's a chicken and egg. Well, we can't get it because of the infrastructure isn't there. Well, but they also can't get it because they can't afford it. So I wouldn't want us to needlessly take up those parking spaces if the need is not in fact there. And then if we get to that point where the people who are being primarily served by these charging stations are saying, I can never use it because someone's always there, then that's something that we can then address later.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was suggesting we look at each of the sites on a case-by-case basis to see whether on a regular day and in the evening, is there a lot of parking on the street? Because if there is, that's telling us one thing. If there isn't, that's telling us something else, that's not going to be a problem.
And I can tell you that as staff looked at the various locations that were proposed by PGE, we did day inspections at different times of the day. So one group looked in the morning, one group looked more like around lunchtime. And what we found was that these locations were not overly parked, where there was space available. We also were sometimes we know the neighborhood really well, and we're like, that will not work in that neighborhood. One of them got crossed off for that reason. We also had others that, because of the amount of multifamily or like quadplex type houses around, it provided more of the opportunity that we knew PGE was looking for and looked like more an opportunistic site and didn't appear to have a parking issue. So, but again, that's subjective.
Yeah, well, again, I appreciate the fact that you did go look at it during the day. I'd be going to look at it at night,
Yep.
To see who's actually, cruising through there or if there is a parking issue. Because it's, it's different after everybody starts getting home. So, all right. Any other questions? So, if you're interested, the neighborhood does have a meeting coming up in about 3 weeks. If you wanted to come and you're not asking permission, you're just providing information. It's the 16th.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to. I
Yeah.
did that for several different neighbor associations in Salem, so I have no problem doing that.
Okay. I'll get the information to you and you can get it to him.
Perfect.
Does this have to come back for approval? Or
It
is
does
it-
not
is it
require
an
commission
outright
approval because
permit?
there's no agreement. So from what I'm hearing, I'm hearing general consensus that you support the program, and we just want to make sure that the neighborhood, has the ability to weigh in, and so.
Be informed.
Yes.
And be informed.
Yes, I'm not asking,
Thank you.
saying not permission, you're
Be informed.
informing, exactly.
Yep, and so it sounds like PG is willing to do that step to inform the neighborhood, and then after that, we can proceed implementing.
Right, and we'll just use whatever signage there is and then track it as we hear complaints. I mean, you're not going to know who's going to need it until you put the infrastructure in to see who needs it to park there. The parking study right now will not show you what the impact is because there's no reason to park there with an EV. Okay?
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep, that one on 7th is at, that's between Van Buren and Polk. Awesome sauce. All right, next on our agenda, we have a discussion about the sidewalk replacement process. And as I stated previously, I appreciate the city manager and staff putting this on the agenda. We have some basic information, but we will probably need a lot more information, so we will not be making a decision tonight. We need to be able to give staff some direction about where to go with this. So I am not going to be asking for any public comments. We need to figure out what direction we need to go in. And I did forward to the city manager some information that I received from some of the neighbors who were here from last week. So if you would like to go ahead, is it you or Tony, is Carrie doing it?
Well, Carrie can kick it
Okay,
off.
all right.
Thank you, Mayor McGriff and Commissioners. I worked with the Public Works Department to put together this memo to try to give a sort of framework around the sidewalk repair issue. The city code, municipal code requires that an owner or occupant of real property is responsible for maintaining their adjacent sidewalks in good condition or in good repair, and that's been part of the code for a long time. Good repair is defined by city policy as being consistent with the ADA standards to prohibit changes in vertical slope of 1/4 inch or more. And so tripping hazard is the threshold that the city looks at when it receives a complaint. What I found interesting, and I didn't know until Josh told me, was that Oregon City does not also regulate slope, cracks, divots, or other surface failures. So it's a policy choice, but I think when you exercise that policy, you have to do it consistent with the ADA, because that's the guiding principle that is dictating our repair and replacement program. Before the city gets involved, an owner has, all kinds of latitude to decide how to maintain or repair their sidewalks. They can use epoxy, there's fill products, there's sealing. So the city doesn't regulate any of sort of maintenance activities that an owner pursues before a complaint gets filed. If a complaint gets filed, then the city comes out and inspects. The city allows grinding when the change of elevation is between 1/4 inch to 1.5 inches, and at least half of the thickness of the sidewalk remains. And that's the challenge for these folks. The sidewalk's only 2 inches thick, so there isn't enough remaining after grinding. If there isn't that half of the thickness of the sidewalk remaining, then the homeowner has to replace the sidewalk panel. And a homeowner can do this either on their own or they can hire a contractor. The city reports that the cost of a panel is between $700 and $1,000. So then the city's enforcement program is complaint driven. Once the city receives a complaint, they inspect, and then they provide notice to the owner for the repairs to be completed in 90 days. That's what the code says. The code says that an owner has to complete in 90 days. As a practice, though, the city generally works with owners to try to, there's some cases where the weather doesn't allow you to replace the sidewalks in, the middle of February in the rain. So there's some, outside the owner's control reasons that the city works with owners. But as a general matter, the city works with owners, I understand, and accommodates their timing issues. I think that an owner can work with other owners and hire one contractor to do multiple panels as a way to save money. And the city has a permit that allows for one permit that goes for a whole street or an adjacent block. So the city has a practice of providing a second notice and then a third notice, and the third notice tells an owner that if they don't take action within a certain period of time, they're going to be sent to code enforcement. And I understand from the code enforcement folks that in 99.6% of the times, that third notice inspires action. So we're not in an enforcement situation with most of these folks. So as a practical matter, this first, second, and third notice procedure and the permit that you have to get if you're replacing the sidewalks, those all have taken together result in about 180 days that owners have as a practical matter to get these issues resolved. And one of the options we proposed is amending the code to make that clear that owners will have 180 days to sort of reflect. And so the first notice would set forth, sort of the process and make it clear that folks have more time. The cost of a permit is $207 for an individual property and $413 if it's a group permit. These fees are reduced for participants within the Street Tree Grant Program. The Street Tree Grant Program was started in 2021, and it is directed at reimbursing homeowners where sidewalk damage is caused by the roots of street trees. The program provides a maximum reimbursement of $1,500 per site, which is defined by the street tree causing the damage. So it could be one panel, it could be 3 panels, but it's all geared towards reimbursing you for the site. So if you have more than one site, you can be reimbursed up to $1,500 for each site or each tree that is causing damage. So the program's been in existence for about 3 years. The average reimbursement is about $2,300. The maximum reimbursement has been $9,000. There's reduced sidewalk repair permit fees I mentioned of $103 per individuals or $206 group permit. So in the first 6 months after rollout, the city reimbursed a total of $225,000 for 107 applicants, directed at 182 sites or trees. During fiscal year 2024, the city reimbursed $100,000 for 44 applicants on 79 sites. And over the last year, the city has reimbursed $77,000 for 51 applicants covering 57 sites. It's important to note that if you don't have to remove the tree as part of in order to qualify for the grant program, the city will reimburse you for the cost of removing the tree, but the city won't reimburse you for the cost of a new tree, and you may have to get a new tree depending on the tree permit requirements. Once you get reimbursement for a particular site, you can't come and get it again. So if you don't take the tree out as part of your process, and the tree damages your new sidewalks, you can't come back to the well for a new grant reimbursement. So that's the grant program. Josh should tell me that over the past 3 years, the number of applicants subject to a city repair mandate who qualify for reimbursement far exceeds those who do not. So, I mean, your program is working at providing relief for homeowners who are adversely affected by street trees. So then I wanted to turn quickly to sidewalk complaints, just so we can put the current situation into some context. The city received 46 complaints alleging sidewalk disrepair in the fiscal year 2023. The number of complaints in 2024 was 84. In 2025, it was 91. So far, it's been 91 complaints. Of those 91 complaints, 67 are in the McLoughlin neighborhood and were submitted between April and mid-May. And we attached a map so that you can see sort of where these all are located. After inspection, Public Works staff identified the need for repairs on 60 out of the 67 locations. Of those, 40 properties are not eligible for the street tree grant program because they have no street trees. The remaining 20 properties are eligible or partially eligible. So the second possible option that staff identify would be expanding the street tree grant program to include a reimbursement for sidewalk repairs that aren't associated with street trees. And so there's sort of two threshold questions that would come with that I think the commission would want to weigh in on. Would this be citywide? Right, would it apply to anybody who has sidewalk repairs? Would they have to be subject to a complaint first, or could they just apply? And then the question is, how are you going to set the reimbursement? Because the way it works now, it's based on a site, a tree, which makes a sort of discrete area for you to determine the impact area. Is it going to be per property owner? I mean, if it's per property, the person with the long frontage who has a lot of sidewalk repairs will get the same amount as somebody who doesn't have a lot. And so there are sort of a lot of policy questions bound up in this question of how you're going to, if you want to expand it, how exactly you're going to expand it. Is it going to be per panel? You're going to reimburse based on per panel. And then you have the sort of policy question of the money, right? And where the money's going to come from. So those are the two options the staff was able to identify in about the 48 hours between when we had to.
Yes, thank you, and thank you. We appreciate it.
So that, I'm sure there are more options, we just haven't had a lot of time to put our minds to it, but you may have some options too, so that's my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any thoughts, Rocky?
I'm trying to remember. I think I didn't support the program. And it wasn't because it wasn't needed. It was because there was this idea once we dealt with the first neighborhood that was it. And I knew that wasn't true. And then we dealt with the second neighborhood, and now we're dealing with the third or fourth neighborhood. It's ongoing, and this is gonna be an issue for a long time. Partly because of the street tree mistake, but also just because we have old sidewalks. I think because it was so narrow, that was what I was concerned about. The fact is, once you say okay to one neighborhood, you're citywide. I think we have to make it citywide if it's gonna be anything, because we can't pick and choose which neighborhoods we're paying for sidewalks and which we're not. And I think, once you get into that, there's so many different issues and variables that it's really complicated. Some of the examples or some of the possibilities on how to expand it. I do think it should be expanded, because I think this issue is going to be ongoing throughout the whole neighborhood and beyond multiple neighborhoods. I don't think it's going to end. But how to deal with it? What is about the cost of the panels? Some people are saying we're doing 1 panel, 2 panels, 3 panels. I think we have to kind of figure out, if it's 1 panel, maybe the homeowner's on their own to some degree. I want to see us still be responsible for the tree mistake. So that's one piece of it. Separate from that, if we're getting into doing things that are beyond the the street tree issue that the city made, then I think we need to figure out, okay, is one panel, semi-affordable for a family, and if it becomes 2 or 3 or whatever, we step in to help out. But I'm sure there's other ways of thinking about it. It's super complex, and it's gonna be very hard to figure that out, because the next year, we're gonna have another neighborhood with a different issue, and we're gonna be doing the same thing again.
So my understanding is a panel is between $700 and $1,000. I can't remember exactly, but there's something unique about McLoughlin panels. I think they're bigger, and I think Josh said they're longer, and they have score lines that are a little bit different, and we want to match those same score lines. So again, a panel is not necessarily uniform across the city, and so that and if you have we're talking about tripping hazards, right? So you've got 2 panels, because these are gonna, in some cases.
Then there is some expectation that it matches the existing sidewalk?
Well, I think
color,
no, I don't think in terms of color. I think there's a score. I think what we would try to do is match the score lines.
You're talking about that separates the panels.
Yeah. Some panels are actually separated panels, and some have score lines that make it look like they're actually separate panels, but they're just like lines in concrete.
Well, I'm probably the only one on this commission that's replaced a panel on the sidewalk from their house. And the ones on my street are separate sections, and there's a line in between each of the sections of it. So I had to replace, one panel and deal with the tree that was causing the alleged problem. But again, mine was fairly voluntary compliance, because the tree was doing it, but it was hitting my stone wall, which was the issue I had, because I didn't want it to burrow under it's holding up all this complete side of my property. So I tried to find my receipts to see whether I could figure out how much that costs, but it depends on which street you're on. Some of the more major streets have, like you said, a different score line, but again, it also has to do with the depth of the sidewalk. So some of them are very thin, and some of them are not. Just depends on where it is in the neighborhood. So most of this is over in what I would call the Dutch camp area of McLoughlin, and that's an older area.
Thank you. I've been going back and forth on this, because going back to when we initially put this program into place, the only reason why we entertained a reimbursement was because we understood that the instances that were presented to us at those moments were partially the fault of the city because of the trees that we allowed to be planted there. And so I feel the frustration that the neighbors have communicated to us at our last meeting, but at the same time, I have a hard time with what the original intent of this program was to be, which was our admonition that the city had error on its part. And in the cases that do not qualify for the program as is, that is, at least to my understanding, not the case as it relates to trees at the very least. Maybe there are other factors where you could argue that the city is at fault or ought to be on the hook for part of it. But again, just going back to the entire reason why we have this program in the first place, it's because we were recognizing that we were owning up to the mistakes of the past on our end.
Scott?
I think all of that is true, and this is concerning what's happening to people. And the fact that we had folks talking to us the other night that are contemplating selling their home, some that already have, that's crazy to me that people are in this position, because while I understand the logic and the reasoning of asking a homeowner to maintain the sidewalk in front of their house, they are also maintaining it for the public good. I also understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, some of the issue with some of these panels is the thickness, the fact that they're older and I believe the new standard is 4 inches, right? And a lot of these are 2 inches. And I feel like there should be some consideration for recognizing that within this district of old sidewalks and folks that are maintaining older historic homes, that there, could be some support, some leeway in maintaining the characteristics of this neighborhood, and recognizing these old sidewalks that were put in don't meet current standards, and they're cracking easily, the roots are coming up, and options for grinding are limited. I think all of that's important to take into consideration. I can't sit with the thought that people are saying, hey, I might have to sell my house and move. That's unacceptable to me.
Well, I guess I have, I know that you are not a subject matter expert on ADA, and you explained a little bit in your memo, but does everything that was the subject of the complaint fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act? I mean, there were a couple of places where, yes, maybe there's a lift. I could understand that. But if the sidewalk is got a crack in it, I don't see how that would impede. I mean, maybe it's a judgment call on my part, but I'm just trying to understand, are some of the problems more severe than other parts? And I don't know which of our staff can answer that question.
I haven't inspected any sidewalks, so I'm probably not the person to talk about that. What I can tell you is that the ADA stands as a guidepost in this case. It is not the regulation that we have to comply with. Whereas if we're putting in a new sidewalk we're doing street improvements at a corner, and we're putting in a new sidewalk, we have to put in ramps. Right?
I understand
because
that.
ADA says when you're doing a new thing, you've got to put in the ADA requirements. We are using the ADA as a guidepost here. If we were to do something different than the ADA, say we overlook the ADA, say we're not gonna enforce any sidewalk repairs.
Sure.
Let's say we didn't do that.
Sure.
There isn't a ADA lawyer who will come and sue the city because we're not in compliance with the ADA. There isn't enough, the city doesn't have an affirmative mandate to make all of its sidewalks ADA accessible. We have an obligation when we make new changes and we make alterations, we do have to make them ADA accessible. But homeowners don't have to go out and comply with the ADA. The issue, though, is that we as a jurisdiction have an obligation to make our city as accessible as we can. And we also want to avoid trip and falls.
Sure.
Separate from ADA.
Sure.
The code says that a property owner is responsible and fully liable if there's a trip and fall. That could happen with anybody. But we all know that if somebody trips and falls and there's a lawsuit, the city will be named, right? So we want to try to fix the sidewalks when we know there are problems, and we want to do it in a way that is timely, but we also want to be thoughtful of homeowners. Having sidewalk repairs is sort of an indicia of homeownership. And, everybody who's owned a home for some period of time has had to make panel repairs, and that is the nature of owning a home in a city. I don't know of another city that doesn't have an enforcement program and mandates that homeowners maintain their sidewalks. So, although the circumstances surrounding this are, in bad faith perhaps, the city knows, and the city has to do something too. And I think that that's part of what makes this difficult, right?
Yeah.
So what we tried to do was put together options that acknowledge the city's obligation too. And,
Okay, well, I guess I would ask if staff could give me sort of a Cliff Notes version of the severity of what they observed in terms of, you know, do we have major tree lifts or do we have cracks and crumbling sidewalks?
Well, I think they identified in
I
the
know.
staff report that of the 67 complaints,
Uh-huh.
60.
20% was.
Yeah, I'm trying to find
60
that in here.
It's under sidewalk complaints on the bottom of
Okay,
the
I
second
see it.
page. 67 locations were identified in the April to mid-May. After inspection, Public Works identified a need for repairs for 60 of those 67. Of those, 40 are not eligible for the grant program as they have no street trees associated with them.
Okay,
So
Yeah,
we
I-
look at the 1/4-inch lift as identified as the tripping hazard.
and that's what the majority of them are?
They're all that.
Okay, what about the one that said that the sidewalk was crumbling? Because it's
The
very
city
thin.
only regulates tripping hazard created by a
Lift.
lift.
Okay. I was just trying to get a better understanding of some of the other ones that were mentioned at a meeting.
Yeah, just for confirmation, it's at the beginning of your memo that good condition from the code is defined as a tripping hazard, and a tripping hazard is defined by the ADA as a 1/4-inch vertical elevation difference or more. If a sidewalk is cracked, spalling, rutting, those are not tripping hazards.
Okay.
In most cases, every now and then it's rutted so bad it turns into a tripping hazard.
Sure.
But 99% of the time, it's the change
The
in
lift,
elevation.
it's the lift. Okay, that gives me more
Yeah,
context.
but cracks are not regulated.
Okay, so I agree with you, Scott. I think that while there is some reluctance, I think, again, we are in an unusual circumstance. I don't think we ever anticipated that we were going to have the severity and the number. I mean, you can see the numbers, because there is a situation where a person is looking at things under a microscope. So and I agree with you, these are not ADA, complaints per se, and I'm glad you said that on the record, that it is a guide, because that was my understanding. It is a guide, is not the rule, unless we are doing a public works improvement of some sort and we have to, fix the intersections, and that I get. So I see this again. I know that we have a lot of exceptions, but I don't think we ever envisioned this, and I would suggest that we, number one, until we can come up with a solution, that we suspend the timeframe. Number one, in order for us to come up with something, if we come up with something, because I don't think people should be penalized for somebody else's bad acts. I think that the people that have the tree issues, I would certainly encourage them to take advantage of the program as we have it now. What I'm also concerned about, as the city manager indicated, is that there may be some budgetary constraints. And I went back to my budget and was looking to see where that was. So I don't exactly know how much we currently have, and the number is irrelevant, but we probably have some. But I think that we need to create some sort of a subset of that program to address this particular issue. And what I don't want, which we don't have any control over, is, how do we know that 2 weeks from now, we're not going to get fill in the blank number of permits? And I don't have a good way to suggest that this is going to continue to be an ongoing issue. Like I said, I don't think any of us ever anticipated we would be dealing with an issue of this magnitude, and I think that we need to figure out a solution to try to help people. I don't think we have the funding. We're not funding anybody 100%, so I don't see that we don't have the ability to do that. But I think given the circumstances, I'm not ready to say we need to do this citywide, because I think we have an emergency situation like right now, that we need to give people a reasonable way to try to achieve the goal without causing people to have undue stress. They're already under stress. for reasons we all are very aware of. And this is just one more thing.
So, to your question about the budget, it's $125,000 per year. That's what we ended up approving.
That's what I thought.
I do appreciate what Commissioner Wilson said about the thickness of the sidewalks, and that's something that I think could be considered as
A criteria.
a criteria, and I would be open to that. However, to the point that was brought up about people who have said that they may have to sell their home because they can't afford it, I totally sympathize with those sentiments, but at the same time, I think we've all had, during our tenures, we've had people come to us telling us because of one reason or another, they might have to sell their home and move somewhere else. And I have never, ever, ever been able to offer them a public investment to stave that off, much less a monetary reimbursement. So we can't just always use that as an argument that we just don't want people to move away. That's absolutely not something that I would like to see. But at a certain point, we rationalize it to the point where we start opening ourselves up to, well, why doesn't this apply to me in this instance? And then you kind of got to this at the end of your comment, which was what prevents this in the future from happening with other bad actors or the same bad actor in other neighborhoods that just causes the allocated amount for our biennial budget to just automatically dry up. Does that necessitate us in future budgets to then say, well, people are saying that they're going to move away, so we have to
I think you
invest
said it was my
more
criteria. My colleague said
into
that.
this? And so that's where I have the issue is where this stops and how we limit ourselves and go back to what the original intent of this program was. But with that being said, I still am open to considering the certain variances that might apply to this neighborhood.
Well, I think your idea of adding the situation that we find ourselves in, an over 150-year neighborhood, that the sidewalks that are built in, Barlow Crest or, Char Diaz are not the same as the sidewalks we have there. I mean, I'm surprised some of them have lasted this long, knowing that, they just didn't have those kind of standards. So would any of you be open to the idea of right now, not right now, but directing staff to look at suspending the enforcement so that at least takes that off their shoulders so that we can figure out if we can come up with a solution? I don't want people to feel like the clock is ticking while we're trying to deliberate and staff is doing more research to figure out what we might be able to do.
Part of, this might be a staff question in a moment. People that have come to the commission furious about sidewalks, even to the point of selling their house or prior, it was for four main reasons. One, the city screwed up and and told the developers to plant the wrong trees. Okay? The other is someone making all the complaints, chronic complaints from one person. That's a routine thing that happened in some of the other neighborhoods. The other issue was the tone of the letters that we were sending the public. That was one of the big ones. And so we could have at any point sent letters that were in the tone of how we actually practice this rather than blanket law. I know that's what we were doing before. I hope that those letters have changed over time, because if they haven't, that's why people are coming in here furious, because they're getting a deadline from the city and a message that was so clearly threatening that it threw people into chaos. I want to know, I would actually like to see the letters that we sent this time around, because I know we talked about that. The letters don't match our actual practice, and there's probably reasons for that, but we can definitely set up a better scenario. If we know it takes time, then we should be sending letters to people saying, hey, this is the law, but we're willing to work with you, blah, 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 blah. Not a threatening thing that causes people to come at 50 at a time to come yell at us. This has happened 2 or 3 times in the past, and we've been very clear to staff that that's not the way we should be doing things. So I would love to see the last 3 versions of letters from the last 3 neighborhoods and see if they changed at all, or did we revert back to the blanket email or the blanket statement that we're sending out to citizens? Because my guess is that's part of it. You know, how we're approaching the citizens. I mean, if we really know that this is a problem, then why aren't we saying, we know this is a problem, we're here to help, here's the issue, here's the law of the land, but we're willing to, be flexible on the time and we're working on ways to help you. That's not, I think, what we're doing.
Okay, so my question was, would you be willing, commissioners, to suspend the time frame that we have currently to allow for more time to come into compliance and for us to work on something if we can work something out? Because I think that is the first domino. I don't think anybody here is gonna.
Maybe, I still want to see the letters.
Well, I agree, but in the meantime, we need to give staff some direction. So you've asked to see the letters. I'm asking for us to look at is suspending the time frame. And if we are going to include something that would have different criteria for the specific, what are we, 180, those sidewalks weren't poured when Oregon City was originally incorporated. So Dutch Camp is probably about 150 years old. So we've got situations where we have substandard sidewalks, and it's nobody's fault. That was the standard when they poured them. Whatever there was, if there was no standard, they just poured them. So that's it. So that's my first question, because we need to give staff some direction. And we've got another topic coming up that's going to be equally as fun to talk about, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk about that. Yes, sir.
So prior to forming an opinion on that, I would like to know how that possibly opens up the city for liability if an instance were to occur and someone were to trip at one of these locations. If we were to extend the timeline and say, we got these complaints, but we decided not to enforce them, how could that open us up for liability?
My recommendation would not be to adopt a formal policy or moratorium on enforcement at this time.
We can't do it.
My recommendation, well, I mean, it wouldn't be a moratorium like you're thinking, but rather than do that, I think the message would be, we're going to revisit this issue and we'll follow up with some letters. Not that we're formally suspending enforcement. The answer to your question is, because the answer to your question is, I don't know. The city, somebody could trip on one of these sidewalks today and the city would get sued. Even if the city doesn't suspend its enforcement. And so I mean, will it matter? I don't know. I think it will matter if we're in the same position in a year and we haven't done anything further and we've suspended our enforcement. Because we may well have 120 complaints, in a year. I have no idea. So there is increased risk.
I'm just trying to figure out a way to give people some additional time. We have, as we've stated, we work with people. I'm hoping that everybody that got a letter has responded to the city in some way. I get a little cranky when we're trying to work with people and then they, basically ghost us and don't say anything. So response is better than no response. So if people are out there listening and you haven't responded to the city, that you got the letter, please respond to staff so that they know that you're aware of it and that you know that we're working on it. I just think we need to give, some direction because we're not going to solve this problem today. Like I said, the people that qualify for the current program, I would definitely recommend that they go for that. It's available. They can deal with part of that, and we'll try to figure out what to do with the others.
So I had a quick question, maybe this is a question for Mr. Kersey, but, so I understand that there's the 90 days and the city has I think it's at a practice or potentially extending it out to 180 days. So my question, and I apologize if you answered this previously, if a homeowner's not within that time frame, but they're demonstrating I have a plan, is there consideration made for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we always send out a 30-day notice once it comes from Public Works to Code Enforcement, kind of just reaffirming like, hey, there's a documented violation. We still need you to go back, get a permit, get this inspected, get it repaired. If they do part of that process during that 30 days, then they would kind of revert back to the permit window, which I think you guys are working on the dates right now, but could be that 90 to 180.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then to answer a question that you brought up, Commissioner Marl, was the idea of like, where does it stop, right? Kind of, and my initial thoughts are the McLoughlin Conservation District within the bounds where the sidewalk is 2 inches thick. That's just my initial thought, is whether or not it makes sense to have considerations for this specific area of our city.
Does Kenema have 2-inch sidewalks too?
Oh, they have no sidewalks.
I thought of that after I said it, sorry.
There might be a bit of a sidewalk on McLoughlin Boulevard, but that would have been the state, but no, there, you, in Kenema, you walk in the street.
Yeah.
If if there is some pavement there that you can actually pass with a car going by you. So no, it would definitely not apply to them because you can't even put sidewalks in Kenema per se in many of the places. Please just speak.
Yes,
We're in a
so-
work session.
I appreciate that, and I think that if we are moving forward with something, that's what it ought to be, or something close to that. I guess the point that I was trying to make with that question was that, as has been stated several times already, this is not something that we ever could have foreseen, and so at what point is there another unforeseen circumstance that continues to,
Well, we'll deal with it when
I'm
we
wondering
get there.
how we all think this isn't something we could see being foreseen. I mean,
You're saying you don't understand how we could not have foreseen this?
absolutely, I can't understand.
You think we
know
could have?
those-
You think we could foresee 60 some odd complaints come in
We can't foresee
within?
that there, a neighborhood that has 2-inch sidewalks that is aged is not gonna at some point be a problem? Are we kidding?
I think we would have looked at it from a case-by-case basis. I don't think we anticipated having it en masse. No, I don't think anybody thought in their wildest dreams that would have
It's en masse
occurred.
because we have someone abusing the system, and it's en masse because we're probably communicating wrong.
I just want to do a little bit of a postscript about what you brought up previously, because I think the record needs to be set straight. What I truly believe happened was that the city has always had a street tree list from the time that I am aware of it.
And the street tree list was wrong.
And maybe the street tree list in parts were wrong.
Maybe?
Well, anyway, just let me finish, please. So there are
It
some,
was wrong,
well,
or else it wouldn't have been changed. Or else we wouldn't have developed this policy in the first place.
Well,
You weren't on
again,
commission at that time when we were
I
doing
wasn't,
that.
let me explain, please. Let me,
Go ahead, but
I
you're
know.
wrong.
well, I'm just giving you information. I'm not making a value judgment whether somebody was right or wrong. The areas that the street trees were planted in some of those neighborhoods, was too narrow, and what did not happen is there was no follow-up to say, oh, there's a tree that's, don't plant a tree here next to this sign or next to this intersection or that was during an era of unprecedented growth in that Barlow Crest neighborhood. I was not working for the city at the time, but I know for a fact that there wasn't a lot of follow-up. And yes, the city probably was in the wrong, and the city is trying to correct it. But to say that the street tree list was wrong, there were trees that were on that list that should have never been planted in those particular areas. It was done the same way. It had, if you got this part of a parking strip, because I used it to plant my trees in my parking strip, and they were approved because I had a certain width parking strip, and that's what that's what was planted in my parking strip. Now, that's not what happened in the neighborhoods of those folks that came. The developer just bought a bunch of trees, they put them in, nobody signed off on it because we asked, and those things were not checked off, and that's what happened. And so the trees did what they were gonna do. They grew. So I planted an approved street tree in an approved parking strip in my house, at my house, and I could not have foreseen that, and I put a barrier around, I could not have foreseen that the tree figured out how to get around it and go under the sidewalk where I didn't want it to go. So I took responsibility for that. My tree was approved by the city, but I picked it and I replaced my sidewalk. So I'm just telling you my own personal situation. I'm not trying to debate you whether it's right or wrong.
I'm not sure why you are, because it really has nothing to do.
Well, it's just because, you know, people's recollection, you know, memory is an interesting thing. And we remember certain things a certain way, but, you know, again, so.
My point is,
So, Mr.
clear
Conkle,
only
do you
that
have-
we could have easily foreseen the problem of 2-inch sidewalks that were aging in that neighborhood. That's all I was saying, period. Has nothing to do with street trees in that
Well,
neighborhood.
some of them are street tree issues.
Some of them.
Some of the
They
20
already
20
qualify
of
under
the
this
40 are,
program.
which,
20
and
of
we
the
have a
40 are,
program
yeah.
to help.
And they already,
Yeah.
The folks that
that's
have-
why we have the
And
program.
we
20
said we
or 20
encouraged
to
them to
60.
do
What you're
that.
talking about
So
has
do you
no
have
bearings
some,
on what
do you
we're
have a
talking about.
modicum of direction of where we'd like to go with this?
If I may, I think it would be helpful if we had some further direction on what the reimbursement is going to look like. Is it going to be commensurate with the street tree program where the average reimbursement is $2,300? Is it going to be I mean, I understand it's going to be constrained to the 2 inches and in McLoughlin only, but is it going to be per panel, or is it going to be just if you have tripping hazards, you get up to $2,300? Or do you need more information from staff about that to decide?
I need more information because I don't know if
And what
property
would that
A
information
has.
include?
I don't know whether there are multiple panels per property or there's a single panel per property.
Some of them are multiple,
Okay, so that would be good to know.
okay?
I think the exception of the ones that are trees, because we already have a program to cover that, so it would be the ones that don't have trees.
So we're talking about the 40 who aren't.
Right, so that would be good to know what you know, is, like I said, is it 1 panel, 2 panels, 3 panels? I presume that most of these are on a frontage of some sort.
I would think so.
I don't know if any of them are corners, because if somebody has a front yard and a side yard, and let's say they've got 3 panels on each side, it would be good to know it. I'm not saying what the formula is, it just would be good to know what we are dealing with to try to come up with something that's equitable. And how did we decide on, I'm not sure what the methodology was we used, and I'm not looking at you because you're gonna have an instant memory about it, but the staff came back with a suggestion on, okay, the street tree, you know, if it raised the panel on both sides, and there was a formula for that. And that's how they were looking at it.
It's
Is my memory
1,500
correct?
Maximum of 15.
It's 1,500 per site.
Per site.
And a site is a tree.
Right.
So however many panels are broken from one tree, it's one site. You
Right.
get $1,500
Right.
per tree.
So we don't have a tree, so do
So
we
we
want
don't
to do it
have
by
a-
frontage, or do we want to do
I
it
think
by
we just-
panel?
I think it's just hearing that this is something that the commission is interested in discussing
Yes.
further. Okay. Let us go back, because I think one of the drawbacks of the way we set up the tree program was if you got 1 panel, right, or if you got 3 from one side, right? You do wonder if a percentage, is a better way to do it. I'll just point out at, 67 at 2,300 is 138,000. We budgeted 120,000, 125,000 for this year, or for 25, 26, 26, 27, right? So I mean, this will have a budgetary impact, right?
Absolutely.
And so how to
Equity.
provide some relief while maximizing the funds that are available
Right.
would be something we would be looking at. But
I think we're all in agreement with that.
I think just give us, hearing that this is the direction you want to go, we can kind of sit down with code and public works and identify whether it's timing or what a program looks like. You know, it's based on, you know, frontages, so you catch your corner lots versus someone who only has one, but it's, you know, what I'm hearing though is we're not, you know, we're going to set it up like the tree program where it's a partial reimbursement
Right.
of a program for the work that needs to be done.
And again, maybe it's a, you know, it's a percentage. If you have one panel, it could be X. If you have two panels, it's X. If you have three panels or you're on a corner, you got, that could be a way to go. So,
I think we understand. We need something that's going to be implemented.
Forgive me if this is out of left field, but we're talking about like direct
We're already there.
reimbursement. Yeah, okay, I appreciate that. Like, is there any, I mean, what if we were to consider something unorthodox, like a property tax credit? Would that even be an option?
we don't control that.
Okay.
Exactly.
Property tax credit.
I'm just trying to think of like really out of the box ways that we can try and support this, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how we would forego taxes.
That's
That's
why I don't know,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm like,
I don't
this
know
is,
if we
this
can
is
do
a,
that.
You know, the city does the work,
Yeah.
liens the property, you know, maybe there's a low interest or no
Yeah.
interest that gets paid upon sale. You know, how to, we don't have the ability to waive. I don't know,
Property tax.
Property tax specifically.
What about whether or not there are any, so when we did a major sidewalk improvement project in McLoughlin, I think you might have been CDD director, we got a community development block grant. And apparently, since we have some criteria to meet in the McLoughlin neighborhood with being low income or this or that or whatever, could we check with our friends at the county to see whether there are any community development block grants available? Because if there is, that's how we got a bunch of sidewalk repairs done before. I mean, some of them were in not so great shape. But it was based on a defined area of that neighborhood, again, because the sidewalks were in bad shape.
Call that one.
And I don't even know what they call it today, but it's worth, you know, trying to look into that.
Okay.
And again, if you're listening and you got one of these notices, please contact Ryan and his staff to let them know that you acknowledge you got it and that the city's going to send something back out saying that we are working with you. But just don't ghost us because that is not good.
Okay, anything else?
Nope. And I hope the people that have the tree issues apply for the tree thing. Because that's your opportunity for those, did you say it was 20?
Correct. It was roughly.
yeah, I think it's 20 of the 60 properties qualify.
I mean,
for
when
these
we're writing
commercial.
this, we're focusing on those outside of the program.
Outside of
I
the
mean,
tree thing.
I don't know why we would stop with tree-related.
Well, if it's all of the above. But they have the opportunity to move forward today.
They have a program that exists today
Right,
related
that's
to
what I'm
trees.
saying. Not that we would come after them, but they need to know that there is some relief for that specific circumstance.
Yes, which I would imagine every one of them is notified when they contact the city if they have a tree-related issue.
Is that, they were notified about the tree program? You can nod yes or no. Okay, they were, yeah, okay.
So when this comes back to us, we're going to have potential revisions to eligibility. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then options for how those reimbursement rates are set
What
up.
they might
Right.
look like.
Okay.
What a tree, not tree, sorry,
Sidewalk
sidewalk replacement.
replacement, yeah.
Expansion of the program would look like.
Okay, so I'm supportive of that, again, with the caveat that these are going to be the standards until the next unforeseen circumstance. And then, in which case, we may have to come back and talk about how we didn't foresee this, and in this neighborhood over here,
Well, my
we'll have
colleague
to
will
make
be there
these
to remind
changes.
us, so he's keeping a note, he's
And then-
making notes.
Yeah,
And then-
It's only the 10th time we've dealt with this.
And then also, again, remembering that it cannot be on the city. We cannot expect ourselves as a city to be on the hook for private home ownership issues, regardless of the degree of financial hardship. That cannot be the lens through which
No,
we
I
approach
totally agree with you.
these, because we have to remember what it is that we as a local government are here to do. And so, again, I go back to hearing from people after the ice storm saying, well, I can't afford this roof repair because this huge limb, well, maybe, and you are familiar with that, and I'm glad that you
yes.
did not have to move. But I recall hearing people reaching out about that, and
Asking us to pay for roof repairs for the
no,
ice storm?
no,
Oh,
not,
okay,
no,
okay.
but I think at a certain point, you can connect the dots and, well, maybe there is a rationale coming from the reasonings we're using for this, that maybe we ought to be paying for those. That I just think that we ought to be aware of as we consider extending this.
Well, I think you specified, you agreed with his criteria, so it'll be a subset of this. It's only going to apply to this particular circumstance. And again, I don't like governing that way either, but it gets down to, it's partially a livability issue. I never brought up, oh, if we don't do this, you know, somebody's gonna have to sell their house. That's a private decision. If they feel they need to sell their house, that has nothing to do with us. That is a decision that somebody makes based on whatever circumstances they have. If they feel that that's something they have to do, that's private. But I think, you know, in looking at this from the standpoint of, it is definitely what I like to call one of those unforeseen circumstances. And, you know, we've all been around here a very long time, and I would say never in my wildest dreams would I ever have come up with that one. So anyway, so let's move on to the next item, and hopefully the people that are here have some comfort that we're trying to do something. So I'm going to ask for a 5-minute break, coming back at 20 till. farting around with this thing for quite a while. So,
Yes, so Mayor and Commissioners, we are back tonight speaking about the McLoughlin Promenade. So as you pointed out, we did a last work session on this March 11th, and then we did a tour, it was in April, of 11 specific properties. In the packet this evening, you'll see that I updated the list of properties based on any feedback that we, as staff, received from you all when you went through the property list, and then we're just looking for guidance on the properties you toured as well, and then if there's any changes or differing thoughts on anything you came to consensus to at the last work session. The essentially menu of options hasn't changed, so the options in the staff report remain the same. Again, we're just looking for direction.
may I ask a question? So in light of the last time we met, and I'm trying to, I shouldn't have forgotten when we last met about this, but as I recall from your memo, you have had 5 property owners who have not responded to any attempts for correspondence, call, mail, knocking on doors, whatever. Is that still the same 5?
Yes, I believe so. We did have the owner who needed the right-of-way permit in addition to the agreement. He did reach out and asked for the information about the right-of-way permit, so I provided that to him. However, I haven't heard back.
Is that one of the 5?
I believe it was initially, yes, and then now he's, now
Okay, so now
I have
we've had-
heard,
now we have
yes.
4.
So I think there has, sorry, so I think since this has been kicked a couple
know,
times,
I know.
it's, yeah,
Okay.
those numbers might not be exactly right now, sorry about that, I didn't update
Okay,
those.
so we have 4 that have not responded to
right.
any attempts, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, but what I did do is in the document that lists all of the properties, I did make sure to go in and update kind of the, the latest discussions we or you all had about those properties. There's letters in there if I received anything and any other questions. There's been a couple property owners that have simply just reached out to see when this would be on the agenda next, but really no other commentary or information of any kind, just wanting to know when you'd be discussing it again. That was it.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the, oh gosh, sorry. It starts, you have it, it's under the McLoughlin Promenade property list.
Correct. Yes. And I just wanted to make a note that the tour, those properties weren't listed in the same order.
Right.
I apologize, but I did that because we were going in order of when we would actually see the properties as we walked along the promenade. So if you look at the document that is titled Promenade Property List, I've made notes in highlighted yellow, letting you all know how that property number corresponded to the tours, just to try to avoid any confusion.
Yeah, when I printed out the first list, I didn't really see, okay, on this one you have current, on this property tour list, you have status, which is, that's great.
Yes, and then if you look at the property list itself, the current status is, there are the properties that you toured. There's also the current status of the ones where there seemed to be some amount of consensus on next steps from the March 11th work session. So those are in there as well.
Okay, so number 4, we've had no response. Number 5, we've had no response. They're here tonight. Number 6, I've had some communication with them. 7 is no response. We had a response from 8, but okay. I'm just looking for the ones that we've had no response from whatsoever.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, where would you like us to start? We've got 4 who've executed, so obviously they're off the list. 2 have declined, and 4 that have not responded in any way, and 6 who've engaged at some level. So we want to take the low-hanging fruit first.
However you want to do it is fine with me. I don't know if you just want to move through the document as they're listed, or if you want to try to, jump around according to more of their status. I think last time we just went through the list one by one, but that's up to you.
I did want to ask about the Yates property real quick. I think they're the ones that are willing, they're going to work on something to get it signed, but I saw her the other day and she mentioned about what we wanted to do about the irrigation system that they put in. Would we want to make that an easement of some sort, or, I mean, they don't want to take it out. And they put it in basically, she said, long before we had fire requirements, they put it in because they wanted to make sure if something happened that hillside was at least wet it down.
Yes, I think that was the remaining question. It seemed that there was some amount of consensus on vacating for just the small strip
Yeah.
where the foundation was located, but it did not seem like there was consensus on what to do about the irrigation in the area that they had actually landscaped. So that was the remaining question.
What could we do about that?
Well,
Could we do an easement?
So I believe easements are I think exclusively the one thing that legal counsel has suggested we do not do.
No, do not, okay.
Right. So you'd be looking at, I think kind of when we go through the options, you've got, we still have the encroachment license agreement we've discussed. I know that there's been some heartburn about the contents of that agreement, but that is still on the table. We've discussed doing that agreement without the liability clause. We've discussed just simply doing letters to the property owners stating that we're acknowledging that they are encroaching, that we could ask them to move at any time in the future, but simply allowing them to remain. Vacation has been another option we've talked about. It did seem, based on conversations, that the only area that the commission seemed real interested in possibly vacating was for the foundation, but not for the landscaping. So there's some, there are
My
some
only opinion is I would
options
not be in support of vacating the portion of the promenade because there's an irrigation system. There's got to be another way that we could acknowledge that it's there and not remove it and just
Yeah, so I-
I think if the commission can decide what they want to do with the non-foundation, I think is probably going to be pretty consistent across the remaining of these properties.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's an improvement that benefits, us in terms of watering. I mean, some of the other things don't, I
Well,
wouldn't
I
say
mean-
necessarily benefit.
It's watering a garden.
Well, it's plants.
So for the sake of the low-hanging fruit, which I would consider to be the ones where we've made it clear that we're not interested in going and either receiving those couple of inches back into the park, and that we would like to reach some sort of agreement. How many of those could we, I'm wondering if we could even just go without a formal agreement and go ahead with the letter that you had suggested, considering that come January 1st of next year, recreational immunity will once again be the law of the land. And so presumably the liability issues that we were originally trying to get addressed through these agreements, at least on the low-hanging fruit ones, again, not addressing the ones where we would consider wanting to, bigger pieces of property that, or bigger sections of property that we would want to address. I would be fine just leaving it and going ahead and sending the letter that you had suggested with the understanding that regardless of whether they agree to it or not, we are not liable for it because it's recreational.
Does that make any sense?
It's a choice that the commission can make.
Well, I know, but for instance, the irrigation is not a recreational thing. That's not low-hanging fruit. What I was thinking of the low-hanging fruit is the 4 people that have not contacted us at all. That is very low-hanging. I mean.
I know, what I'm suggesting
Yeah.
is trying to get a swath of these off of our plate so we can discuss the more complicated ones. And in my mind, I think we could simply just say, here's where we are. We don't have to come to an agreement because the law explicitly states that we are not liable for this.
Yes, I believe that you are correctly stating what the law of the land will be on January 1st.
Then what would the rest of the document say?
Letter, I think.
What?
I think we were talking about just creating a letter acknowledging
Yes.
that you are on public property. The city's not liable for this. We can have this removed at any time. should the commission choose to do so, though they're not choosing to do it at this point. I mean, we would, if that's something you're interested in, we would work with Carrie to kind of craft something.
And we had initially actually already started drafting something I think Bill had looked at before he retired, so I would just share what we had with you to go over it again. But we're already working on that as just kind of as an option, if that was the way the commission wanted to go.
Well, maybe we should go through and figure out which ones that might apply to.
Okay.
Let me just say this out. So the people that have not contacted us at all, period, nothing, I think we need to send a letter saying, from code enforcement saying, we've tried to reach you. I don't know how many times you have not responded. So here's the deal. Because I think we have gone out of our way to be responsible and to try to get them to respond at all. I mean, it's just, I don't understand not responding at all. Not even acknowledging, oh, by the way, we got it. No, we're not going to do anything. Or we don't care or whatever. I mean, it's just been 0, 0, 0. And maybe they need to get a letter that says you are now not in compliance. I'm not willing to let them off the hook. So I'm just putting that out there, but do you want to just go through these, starting with number 1 and see which ones you want to apply this to? Because I mean, they're still using, the city property. Again, I don't think people are going to recreate on the side of a hill, so I don't know how recreational immunity will apply, but it is part of the park. So number 1, you want to? I'm not willing to do a lot line adjustment, so.
Okay, so the first property we have the VFW. I think as you'll probably recall, as I've noted here,
Okay,
they did come to
which
present.
number 1 are you starting with? I'm looking at the one that's, so we're going with McLoughlin property list? So this would be VFW?
Yes, because the McLaughlin
Right.
property list has everything, sorry,
Right,
the
okay,
tour
so
list just
VFW,
has the
okay.
11 properties you toured, and
Okay.
that's it.
So they had some weird solution.
They did. So the question was just simply whether you were still interested in entertaining their solution or their proposal, and if you were interested in assigning cost to either party at this point.
That was the swapping of the property, so the
Right.
stairs are on their property and then
Yes.
we get some other
But
piece.
yeah, the stairs would become part of our property. They would simply move, where their lines are, basically. So it was something that they proposed after they had signed the encroachment license agreement.
So we already have the encroachment agreement.
Well,
Has it been executed?
so we executed it and we sent it back to them, and I thought they had executed it and turned it in, but now they're saying that essentially they don't want to follow that, is my recollection.
Well,
So
they already signed it.
So the question was, if there's interest in exploring this option, we could certainly do that. If there isn't, then we would just tell them, no thanks.
You already signed the encroachment agreement, we're
Right.
moving on.
We could.
I guess last time, though, it seemed like there was willingness to work
Right.
with them.
Yeah, I have no
Which is
problem.
where we left it,
I don't have any problem doing that. You okay with that?
to do some lot line adjustments to,
Okay with doing, I guess I'm not
This is
understanding.
the first one, the VFW?
right.
So they had proposed a property swap, so
Right.
their stairs would be on their property and then we would get another piece.
Well, the stairs would be.
On our-
the city's property.
Yeah.
and
It's
then-
currently on our property.
no.
No.
Or sorry, so the stairs will remain, what we were trying to do was we had them sign the encroachment license agreement. We asked them to sign an easement that would allow us then to go onto their property to maintain the stairs, I believe is what was happening. And so they came back and said, well, essentially, can't we just move our lot down and allow basically the city then to take over these parking spaces and keep maintaining the stairs, and then.
I'm not talking about the stairs that go up to the water tower, I'm talking about the stairs that are on the
Oh, yeah.
side.
Oh, the
Those are on
stairs
their
that
own
are
property.
from the, okay, I see, I'm sorry, I
We would do
misunderstood
a lot
that.
line so
Right.
that anything associated with their building would be on their property now.
Right.
And we would clean up that
We'd clean it
northern
up.
property line and the access to the stairs going up to by the water tower.
Right.
Got it.
But there seemed to be consensus that
Right.
it was okay last time.
Yeah,
Right.
they should help pay for part of it though.
Okay.
Okay. Number 2.
All right, so this is the home that requires both the right-of-way permit and the, well, encroachment license agreement, assuming you still want to require that.
Okay, let's just go around the table.
So did they apply for the right-of-way permit?
So he contacted me and asked for all the information. Whether or not he actually followed through and applied, I'm not sure. I have not heard back from him since.
So this one, I think you've got, this is the one where we had two kind of
Two
issues,
issues.
right? We had the right-of-way encroachment issue.
Right.
But then I guess this gets to where would the commission, to your point, Commissioner Marl, are we sending the letter saying your building's on our property? And if it's, whatever we come up with in terms of language that the commission finds acceptable, or are we going down a different road?
You need to get an encroachment permit.
Well, that's what I'm just saying is, the one option that has been identified is we just send these property owners a letter saying you're on public property. Or are we gonna push the encroachment, some type of an encroachment permit on this one?
Where I'm at personally, given, what Commissioner Marl was saying earlier, I would be more in favor of still requiring the right-of-way permit and then the acknowledgement, like, you're on city property. We're just,
I would
just
agree.
making sure you understand, and then, like you said, saying, hey, we can force the removal of said property, whatnot, but that's kind of where I'm at.
I agree with you.
Okay, so it sounds like we still require the right-of-way permit, but then go with the letter for the actual encroachment issue. And then I guess the final question on that is if, assuming that, if they don't follow through with the permit, that you want us to then turn them over to code enforcement after that's been, if that hasn't been
What's
done.
the cost of a right-of-way permit?
I
Is
believe.
it $200 and something is what I recall?
I think with all of the costs all in, I want to say it's closer to 500, but,
It's 500?
well, I think after everything, after all of the different costs associated with it, let me see if I can pull
What's
up an
involved in
email.
a right-of-way permit?
There was quite a bit of, let's see. Let's see if I can find, of course.
Well, if anything happens to the shed whatsoever, I would say it can't be rebuilt and it has to be relocated. If they rebuild it in some way out, it has to not be in the right of way. That's for sure. Should something happen to it.
I think we would, if the commission goes with the letter for the encroachments that exist that are structural in nature, if they were demolished, I think that would be something, every one of these would be removed from
Yes,
public
they would
property.
definitely be removed, yeah.
Except for dealing with the one where the actual house
Yeah, we're gonna.
foundation
Right, we're gonna,
is in
we've already got a
public
solution
property.
for that one.
We'd have to get back to you on the exact right-of-way fee unless you've got it in the narrative.
I remember when a vacation of an alley used to be $100, and I think it's like way more than that now.
Did we not know when this was built, the shed? I mean, I thought we talked about all this.
We did. It was said that it was original to the house, and we don't have any documentation that shows that. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. We can come back to this one.
Well, it's a big deal to me.
Well,
If
I know,
the
but I mean,
city-
we
if
can
the
get-
city knew they built it there and didn't do anything, then it's our problem.
A lot of stuff that was built before we actually had real permits are still existing, and it wasn't our problem. We didn't have,
It's always our problem.
well, I don't feel
If
that
the
way.
city didn't know, it's our problem. and didn't do anything about it all this time, and now you're gonna make them get a permit, and now you're gonna, it's crazy.
So it looks like the total is $666. There's a application review fee for $199 plus $266 for resolution and document processing. So staff actually has to come and prepare a report and recommendation that is then presented to commission. And then the revocable permit fee itself is $199.
Say we ask them to get a permit and we waive it, and we eat it.
I would be open to, if not that, then significantly reducing
I
the
agree
amount
with
that
you
we're
on
charging
that.
because I don't
I don't-
support charging that full amount, but.
I don't either.
I agree with what Commissioner Wilson said about moving ahead with the right-of-way permit, and then the letter seems fine by me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'd require a right-of-way permit for any other shed in the public right-of-way, but I think
Well,
there's
we
something to
wouldn't
be said.
approve a shed.
Well, right, I see what you're saying, but like,
Right-of-way.
yes, and I think there's something to be said about it's been there for a very long time, and I think it's reasonable to say, like, can we look at a reduction in fees or something like that, but still having a permit?
And how much of a reduction?
I can't. Without assigning blame to anybody, I don't believe that that shed's been there as long as it was stated. Knowing the prior property owner.
I guess they'll simplify it. If anyone built anything on our property and we didn't do anything about it, then we have to deal with it. I mean, I think, you know, we're not gonna make them tear these things down. And us asking them to pay anything for a permit, all these people to pay for a permit for the right of way, we didn't stop them from doing it or do anything to notify them prior to today or till we started. It's our fault.
Well,
As a city as a whole,
I
and I'm
really-
not gonna talk anymore about it because this is another one of these things that we're gonna deal with a year from
And-
now if we don't actually figure out how to
We
get
are
the
trying
park
to figure it
apart.
out, but I'm not ready to say that the
It's
city's at
taking
fault
too
for
long.
every
It's
single
taking
thing,
too
Rocky.
long.
That's
How-
unfair.
how
There
much
are
is-
so many things in our neighborhood that people have built without getting any permission whatsoever, whether we knew it or not, and they knew better. That's what I'm telling you. So
Okay, then you guys figure it out,
Yeah,
because that's
okay.
that's my
we'll move.
opinion.
We have 3 people that say, yes, we want them to get a right-of-way permit, and we would consider reducing part of the fee. So let's move on to number 3. So this one is the deck.
Yes.
I think all the other stuff can be removed, so.
We haven't had a response from this property owner.
We have?
We have not.
We have not. Well, I said before, we don't want any fire pits in the park.
So it seemed like before there was agreement to remove the fire pit, the landscaping, rock border,
Yes.
chairs and plantings, and then is this another example of where for the deck that's encroaching, we would send a letter to the owner?
Is
That's
it a-
kind of what we're heading down?
Yeah, is it a low, it's a low deck, as I recall, right? Not a 3 feet. I don't think this shows any pictures of the deck.
Okay, so we're still going to have them remove the items as listed, send them
If
to
they
code
haven't
enforcement.
already been removed.
Right, so if they don't, they would go to code enforcement, the deck can remain, and that would receive the acknowledgement letter. So,
And again, if
Okay.
something happens to the deck, it goes away.
okay.
I don't want somebody who buys this house after them saying, oh, well, the deck was there when I bought the house. Okay, number 4. I think that was another one of these simple ones we said, they got to remove all the stuff.
Yeah.
Was that what we said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Encroachment property to be removed, movable pots, staked items, rock walls.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Number 5.
So this was part of the tour.
Yeah. tour and the other one at the same time, but I can't, so. Oh, this was the tour. Yes, we have it in hard copy.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry. Lots of paper. Okay. Okay. So what was the last thing we said about this?
I believe one of the last discussions that you all had, you had determined that you were fine essentially leaving all of the items in the encroachment, and there hadn't been any flagged for removal. As noted, the encroachment license agreement was not signed. So I think it was just a matter of touring the property and then for you all to determine how you wanted to move forward.
I think there was a suggestion about vacating a portion or something to that effect. I think there was a discussion about that.
We talked about, I mean, with these properties, like kind of next to each other, if I recall correctly, just the idea that Bluff Street kind of bisecting
The park.
the promenade kind of like created this strange division of like, you know, what is public, what is private, and just, it kind of feels weird. But that being said, you know, I initially was like, oh, do some of these properties make sense to vacate? But, you know, and I've been thinking about it longer. You know, we were talking about Bluff Street itself, like, and I don't know what's going to happen down the road and in the future, and I don't know. I'm I guess torn.
Torn asunder.
I'm asunder.
Asunder.
Yeah.
Do we have any appetite to vacate that portion where the little curb part is? Or just the portion that's closest to the house?
Or are we just continuing with letters?
I'm okay with a letter.
I'm fine with the letter. The point that I remember making when we were on the tour is that I agree with what Commissioner Smith said, which is what you just talked about. But the fact is that paving through something does not make something not our property anymore. However, I do sympathize with the natural boundary that it creates there. But in this case, I would just be fine with a letter.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
So are we just going to then solve this by not solving it and passing it on to some other commission down in the future that has to deal with the same crap again?
Well, I agree with you. I think we should solve it once and for all.
That's not what sending a letter
Oh, I
saying,
know.
we know you're
I
on
know.
our
I
property
mean,
and doing
solving it
nothing
once
about
for
it.
all, like, please correct me, it's either forcing removal or vacating. I
Or-
feel.
Okay,
that
well,
way.
in
I
this
mean-
case, we put in, and yes, I know it's not a road, the driveway, or it's whatever you want to call it, it's in the park. We put it there, meaning we as the city of Path. And to say that it's still on our property, true. But that island now that's left between that driveway that we put in as a city and the house has been neglected and abandoned by the city since.
Well, then let's vacate it.
That's what I said from the beginning.
So this to me brings up, what about the houses in succession next to it? Because there is a substantial amount of property and there's been cars parking and just open grass, like
Yeah,
kind
those,
of the
I mean,
issue
we'll have to look at
of,
those we said we had to make some sort of variation, because there is one section that goes way out.
Yeah, and I'm not willing to give up
and
that
they're all,
much
and they're
property.
all separated from the rest of the promenade by the drive. And so at what point do we say, okay, we vacate this, but then it comes over and this we don't vacate? Like it feels, I don't know.
Well, I think what would be helpful is if we could do a rough sketch on a piece of paper so we could see, because one of the things I had a problem with on those other ones was that that was a substantial amount of property, and I can't in good conscience say that, it's not like we're swapping a piece of property for another piece of property. So we give up this amount and then we get this back. So,
We were thinking about this as well. I mean, to your point, could you define it better? Could we go say, okay, we're gonna put in, because I think there's 3 houses along there, right, where they're parking in the grass. Like, you want us to go pave a parking spot for the resident, and you gotta park on there, quit parking in the grass. I mean, do you want to spend time looking at this area before I think there's things we could do if there's interest in doing that, right? There's probably ways to solve this with some design and whatnot, so it's not a free-for-all, and it's better designed, and there is some intent. And I agree, are we kicking it? Yes, a little bit, but we're also defining it right now, so that hopefully this can be used as a tool. If there are expansions in the future, we can go back to this and say, hold on, this is where it was in 2025 when this letter was sent. It resets kind of this unknown of this history of how some of these things happened.
I mean, in an ideal world, when we put in the drive, it would have been consistent all the way down, but it wasn't. And there's various reasons for that. I don't know why, but I would love to see if there's a way to,
well, I'm inclined to agree with you.
relook at that.
My issue is getting a letter does not mean that it's attached to the property, and I know it's expensive to record, but I don't see people in the future going, well, it wasn't attached. I mean, most people don't read their property deeds and stuff anyway, but if it was somehow, in those cases where it was attached to the property, it's sort of the buyer beware thing. If somebody buys it and they don't read it, but then we know about it, and somebody else knows about it. To me, it runs with the land, as opposed to, we have a letter in a file somewhere and, you and I are not here, nobody's here, and they go, oh, well, we don't know anything about that.
So for me, the reason why I don't see a letter as just a temporary fix is because this entire time, my whole goal has been to let as many of the immovable or less than ideal to move areas to stay. And to allow that, it means that we have to address the liability issue. And since that has already been addressed for us, I don't think that just simply sending a letter that, hey, this is what the law says now, kicks the can down the road, because I was never in favor of us trying to force removal of.
Well, let me back up, take your thought one more thought. So if we're going to remove the issue of the liability, which is what a lot of people had problems with, what about what we were trying to do in the first place, saying that, what did we call it, Tony?
It's like a license agreement, I think.
Yeah, whatever we called it, that now that was the objection, we waive that because of the new law that's coming in, and say, okay, we're going to waive the liability, now sign the encroachment agreement. Because I agree that the simplest way would be, but I agree with you. It's you and I will be 95 years old and we'll go, yeah, wait a minute, back when we were on the council, this came up, and I want us to try to fix it and solve it.
So if the liability issue is resolved, what's the purpose of the encroachment agreement?
It's just saying you're on our property, and that, if something happens, we're not liable because of the recreational immunity.
I guess for me, there's no agreement. It's a statement of fact. This is our property.
That's why I'm just in favor of sending a letter saying this is what you should know.
And again, my concern is, how does that translate to the next property owner that comes in? And who says that they can't, won't go out and put their lawn chairs and their fire pit in,
I would
because
say
they think it's their property.
code enforcement would do that.
I'm not at this time, sorry. We're still trying to think this out ourselves. I apologize. Yeah, I understand. All right, do we want to think about this some more right now and move on? Is the next one in the same category, a number 6?
Well, I would personally be interested in hearing what Mr. Nacita has to say.
I would too.
Well, okay, let's wait till we get to the end.
Well, we're,
Or right now.
I'm just trying to get through. Do you want to hear?
I would, I mean, we're talking about his
Okay,
property.
you've got 2
I'd
minutes.
like to hear what he
You've
has
got
to
2
say.
minutes. That's it. Just sit here. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you,
Green.
James Nacito, Oregon City. Do you want to turn it off?
It's on.
Yeah, green is on.
Is green?
Red is off.
Okay.
Thank you.
James Nacito, Oregon City. I don't know if I'm mishearing or misreading the conversation that's going on, but I want to address the idea of a letter as to what you're all deliberating on. This whole conversation got started over the question of designating the McLoughlin Promenade as a charter park, and to resolve the issues that are raised by the text of the charter park provision. And I think the most pertinent language was the problem with changing, after you designate it, changing the legal status of a park. I think that was Mr. Kabizman's concern. I may be missing something, and I'm happy to be informed and corrected, but I don't know how a mere letter is going to solve any of the problems that you're concerned about prior to designating McLoughlin as a charter park. I think if you just send out letters and then you move to pass an ordinance designating it as a charter park, I don't think a mere letter addresses the concerns that Mr. Kabizman raised when he initially, brought forth his concerns regarding what you had to do before you designated it as a charter park. That's, again, I might be misreading everything, but I think the letter concept is too loose. I don't really think that gets you where you want to go. So that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, again, I don't see how the letter gets us to the simple solution that you are anticipating, and I applaud you for that, but I agree. Bill raised those issues, and our ultimate goal is to designate the McLoughlin Promenade as a charter park. Once those things are there are certain obligations we have as a charter park of things that can be done and things that cannot be done. And if we have buildings and all kinds of stuff in there and somebody does something, we're talking about going to a vote, because that is going to be a change that is going to trigger that. I don't want us to be going to a vote for somebody's shed or whatever.
so the reason why I had suggested the letter was because my number one concern was the issue of liability. And it was just a notice of what the law says and what the facts of the matter are. As it relates to the charter park provision, if we were to just let the property at hand continue to, what was that?
That was just me feeling where the air is blowing on my head, so sorry.
Okay. If we were to go ahead and designate this as a charter park, I don't anticipate wanting to move any of those big ones ever in the first place. So why would we need to go to a vote if we wanted to tear up someone's patio? Because I don't think that's what we want to do. So for me, where I'm coming from is that my number one issue is just how do we clarify the liability issues for each of the parties. For me, again, like I have been saying from the very beginning, I would like to keep as much of what has been encroached upon. I would like to make that as simple as possible. And if that includes leaving some of those encroachments in place because it would be
talking about
really difficult to move
The
them.
physical building.
Yes, the
Yes,
physical,
buildings.
like
Yeah.
this example
Yeah.
right here. I don't see how or why the city would want to go through the process of going for a vote for a 2-foot strip of land.
Yeah, well,
I guess this is, I
Thank you.
think this is something we could probably bring back and talk to Carrie about if, I agree it's not the cleanest way, but in section 41 of the charter, it talks about construct permanent buildings or structures thereon other than for recreational purposes and park maintenance in any case where at the date of adoption of this section, there are existing structures which do not comply with this provision. Such structures and any additions and alterations thereto are accepted from the provisions of this section. I guess I need to talk to Carrie of like, the intent of this was ideally to get them out or
Right.
acknowledged, right? So that when we make it a charter park, it's still gonna be on public property, but putting it on notice, maybe it's as part of the adoption ordinance, it says these can continue until such time as they cannot be expanded, and if they're destroyed, they need to be removed, right?
Yeah.
All this was trying to do was to set, I agree, it's not perfect. It'd be nicer to just adopt something nice and clean with no encroachments or structures or anything on it, but that's not the case we have. So if the goal is the charter park, it's how do we get there? So, I guess it depends if we have any flexibility in how we adopt and write the adopting ordinance, making this a charter park, acknowledging, some exception for the existing encroachments, but then putting a limitation. Like if somebody wants to expand it needs to go to the vote of the people, or the commission needs,
Right.
I don't know. I mean,
And
I
that's
think
not
you have
something
that
we would
flexibility.
want. If someone wanted to
Right.
expand the footprint of.
Build their addition into our play, yeah.
I think that the existing scheme would actually be in our favor
Right.
because they wouldn't be able to make
They
those
wouldn't,
changes.
right.
And we presumably as a city would not want to go out for a vote to see if someone can expand the
No,
footprint
heck
of
no.
their
No,
garage
absolutely.
or their patio.
Heck
So
no.
I just don't, anyway.
okay.
Because I mean, because remember at the beginning, right? There was concerns about, like, we have the rock wall fencing along 99E, right? And part of that's on the property, right? And we wanted to acknowledge these things, somehow incorporate them into the existing conditions so that if we had to come back and do repairs to the rock wall or, any of the utility lines that go through the park, right? That we didn't have to go to a vote,
Right,
right?
because
It was
that's-
really trying to
right.
acknowledge and clean
All of
up as
that,
much as
yeah.
we could before we made it a charter park, because we knew once we did,
Yeah.
this applies.
It protects us as much as it protects them. It
For the
keeps us-
existing
It keeps
conditions.
us from wanting, or from having an incentive to go and say, we want you to tear this down right now, we changed our mind, because we'd have to go out to a vote for the people, but it also makes sure that,
Not to tear it down, we wouldn't.
but it also makes sure that they wouldn't be able to expand any of these encroachments either, and we'd make it very clear that that would also be subject to the vote of the people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How do you feel?
The reason I think Mr. Kabizman recommended the license agreement was to formalize the arrangement with these property owners, where you have affirmative statements by them that they acknowledge that this is the circumstance. The letter is one-sided.
Right, it doesn't acknowledge, it
And
doesn't get
that
their
doesn't-
acknowledgement, it gets our acknowledgement.
And it doesn't mean it's not valid or a good idea. It doesn't get an affirmative statement from a property owner that they understand that this is a license and the city could remove it. I don't think it changes the fact that the ordinance that we draft to create a charter park is going to have to be very detailed in specifying what's in and what's out and what's, we're going to have photographs and,
Right.
and I think Bill's idea was that we would attach those agreements to the charter park documents so that they would be, sort of a formalized package. If we can't get those agreements, then we're in a letter situation and we still write an ordinance that creates a charter park and excludes these as best we can. And I think that there's gonna have to be an acknowledgement on behalf of the city as well as the property owners that there's, once we create a charter park, we've got this charter obligation. And there's, it's a difficult, there are unforeseen circumstances that might happen. And an owner might have to rebuild their stairs and might have to put a post in a different place because the building code says you can't build stairs the way you built them before.
Right.
And then we're in is this a alteration or not? Like, there's just a lot that comes with it, but I don't think it changes the fact that we can write an ordinance around it, whether it's a letter or a license. So, maybe more than you wanted,
Well-
sorry.
Personally, I still prefer the license without the liability requirement. I mean, to me, that's the cleanest. It's acknowledging both. I want something that both sides say, yeah, this is what it is. And the letter gets us part of the way there, but not all.
But that gets to a similar issue, whereas when the property changes ownership, then it's similar to the issue with the letter where it's, well, who knows what they know and whether they're aware of their
And they
responsibilities.
generally
Well,
don't.
And my question is, does an affirmative acknowledgement from the owners of these properties we're talking about, does that change the actual circumstance? And it doesn't sound like it. So
Does what?
Does a license, right, does getting these property owners to sign a license actually change the substance of what we're discussing?
No, it only does if we record it.
I mean, so that's my question. I guess I'm just not understanding what signing a license actually does.
She said it acknowledges that both sides are aware of the situation.
Right, but what does that do for us? That's, I guess, what I'm not understanding. So let's take two properties, right? One property owner has signed the acknowledgement, the other doesn't. Functionally, what's the difference for us?
It sets the line in the sand, like Tony said, we have a affirmative statement of the circumstances in 2025. And this is the document that we all agreed to, what are the circumstances in 2025. And that will inform how we evaluate this as time goes on with these encroachments. So, I mean, an agreement is better, a license is better. But it doesn't make sense to spend months and months chasing chasing an agreement either, which is, sort of what I think Ms. Rain's been doing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, is there consensus on a letter? I know you two are fine with that. You're not? Yes or no?
I don't care.
Okay, well, I don't care is not a yes or a no.
Well, that's what you get.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Number 6. I think I have no problem with the deck and the stairs, but all the other stuff's got to go. Trash in the trailer, and this is a property owner that we have unsuccessfully contacted.
So we'd be doing an acknowledgement letter then for the items that could remain?
Yep.
Okay.
So just out of curiosity, like in this picture, I see there's a car parked in what is the promenade. So
Yes, it
is
is.
the understanding also that we're not parking in the promenade?
No, we are.
I didn't say that.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, no.
So in what we had originally for property number 6, description of approved encroachment was the deck, the stairs, and the parking. This is where I was talking about earlier. This is something we
Yeah.
want to look at.
Yeah.
Defining a space, right? If you, whatever, 10 by 18 foot, right? You got a parking pad.
I don't want to pave any parking pads.
It's just a thought.
Okay, number 7.
Did we agree on the last one?
Well,
Thought so.
Did we?
Yeah, it was a letter that we were gonna,
send a letter for the
the-
permanent improvements.
for the deck, the
and
stairs, and the
parking.
parking. The trailer and the trash needed to be removed.
They can all be on their own personal property, but not in the park. Number 7. We did look at this on the site tour. Have we received any comments, any contact at all from this property owner?
No.
So they have a deck and stairs. The signage and the fence, in my opinion, they need to go.
So for this one, the original idea of the encroachment was the deck, the stairs, the parking, the signage, and the fence.
Yeah.
Nothing to be removed. So yeah, if y'all can provide
I don't
direction
want,
on what you'd like to see.
I don't want the sign there and I don't want the fence there. They didn't respond at all. They shouldn't have even been issued, I don't know if they were issued a sign permit for that, but I don't want a sign in the promenade.
It's hard to see in the picture. This is the property. Oh, I guess I kind of see it there that had the sign
Yep.
out and, okay.
And this one I have unfortunately personal knowledge that that the prior property owners were friends of mine. And they were planning to remove the fence. There was never a sign there in that area because it was a residence.
At the very least, I think the sign needs to go unless they agree to become a corporate sponsor of the McLoughlin Promenade.
We can't require that. They have the opportunity to put signage. They can put it on the house.
But what I'm saying is that we can't have private companies having their signs up on our property.
Property, yeah, exactly, yeah. So the sign and the fence have to go.
I heard the sign.
And it's this little tiny fence.
So we're talking about the little corner fence there?
Yes.
Yeah, I would be in support of that as
Yeah.
well.
Removing the fence.
Yep, and the
Yeah.
sign. Okay. People need to respond. You have encroachment to remove, none. This is parking, deck, and portion of deck and building extended to promenade. So, letter.
Yeah.
Yes for a letter? Okay. Number 9. This is the Ladderette house, correct, with all of the landscaping and the patio?
Just putting out there that the concern I have about this property is the communication with the landscaping that this is private when it is in fact not. And I don't know how to best address that, but I walk the promenade often, and until, we started having these discussions, I always assumed all of this was private property, and I was shocked to learn that it's
No,
not.
And I knew it wasn't, so I
Right.
always go over there.
I always walk through it too.
Pardon?
I always walk through it too.
Me too, because it's not private property, it's public property.
You're in
I know.
in the select few that know, right? So I don't
Absolutely.
know.
It's very visible as not ours. I mean, it looks that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does that mean? We have them open it up enough to make it,
Good.
Did we have we did have some communication with this property owner, as I understand.
Yes, and there is a letter from.
Yeah, I remember there was a letter.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, here it is, we have been da-di-da, yeah.
Yeah. So,
So we can't say for a fact that Ed Ladderette did not know that this was not part of his property, because he's the one who put all that in there.
we just put city signage that says it's a trail.
Okay, I like it. Yep,
Yeah.
so we send them a letter, it's
And if-
they can fence off their private part of it, but yeah, when I walked you through there, I showed you where the private property was and where the public property was.
Well, and transparently, it felt weird. Like it felt like I was walking on somebody's private property.
Yeah.
so we'll do an acknowledgement letter, and then you actually want to do signage that indicates that that's public?
Or do you just want to remove the private property sign?
Yes, let's
Okay.
remove the private property sign, and he can put it on his private property, or their
But
private property.
where is the sign at? Is it on the?
There's a little
There's
sign there.
a little sign.
Little
yeah,
sign.
as you kind
It
of
says
started
private
walking.
property.
Property.
But that also means that, then the question comes to maintenance of that.
And that's brought up in the letter.
That's why the letter says, we're allowing you to keep this here. Thank you very much.
Is it as long as it is in a state of good maintenance that we agree to continue extending? I mean, I don't know.
Well, that's our trade-off. You get to keep it there, but you have to maintain it, and it's city property.
That, I mean, yeah.
So he said it's recognized in
Yeah,
our
they
property in the
well,
park.
they say, fine, you take it back. Maybe, I don't know, we'd have to talk to them, I think.
But yeah, the only stipulation that I would have is just that the sign comes down saying that it's private property. But if they agree to maintain it and we agree that they can keep it there, then that's fine by me, with the understanding that the public can recreate there,
Right.
then that works for me.
Well, it says, if determined that there is another administrative means to allow us to continue to maintain the garden, we will be open to that discussion. However, if we determine that it's not a suitable assurance, we will not be in a position to continue to manicure, irrigate, and otherwise maintain the garden for the benefit of the city and park visitors. These tasks will become responsibility of the city.
Well, it is not to the benefit of the park visitors because they're saying that it's private property.
Well, why don't you, could we have staff to contact them and say we are willing to have it stay there? And we would love for you to continue to maintain it. It says we had been admonished by the Parks Director to keep the property up. I don't know whether they have or not, but yeah. So they can have a private property sign, it just has to be on their property. So have the discussion, I guess. That's kind of our.
Okay.
Can remove this, you know, it's a tiny sign, it is tiny. You're laughing.
Yeah, because, well, what do you say? I mean, I actually was sort of joking about putting the signs up, but I mean, it's another example of us letting it go for so long, and it's essentially their yard.
Well, I asked the dumb question about 25 years ago about, even when Ed was still with us, I said, what's going on here?
Right, so there's an acknowledgement for 25 years as a city, we've let it go, and so there
I was
is our
asking
fault.
privately. Okay, so number 10, I think we have a reasonable solution. The issue we had outstanding on 10 was regarding the irrigation. Is a letter going to suffice for the irrigation? And have we moved forward with the building part?
Not yet, just because
Okay.
we wanted to make
I
sure
think their
that,
solution is reasonable, and I
Okay.
think we had all agreed to that very small vacation of the foundation.
okay,
And they were even willing to help pay for part of it, which is, thank you.
yes, they were.
So the letter would be something to the effect that we acknowledge that that the irrigation system is there and you can continue to encroach on that.
Yes.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Number 11. This was those series of houses you were talking about. You had mentioned previously that, you know, I don't know, does the Parks Master Plan include extending, you know, that trail? Because there is on the map where that's supposed to go.
The road, you mean, or the?
Yeah, well, the going across the,
The driveway?
yeah, well, you come up Bluff Street where it turns by 110 and the trail continues, is supposed to continue
Oh, yeah.
virtually on the ground, and it goes all the way over to where we were with the water tower and comes out on that particular street.
So for this one, the original proposal was to continue to allow access to the back two homes and the
Right.
parking,
Right.
but then removal of all the storage that's back there.
Yep.
Let's see where we're at, send them a letter.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
This one I was more torn on with the parking and whatnot, and, you know,
Well,
I certainly agree with like removing the boat and.
Someday the trail is going to go through there.
Yeah.
Not in my lifetime, but it would be nice to have a continuous trail along there so that you could actually walk the promenade.
Right.
And not end up in a big old Kirkin pile of blackberry bushes. Thoughts, Adam?
Yeah, I agree that the storage goes, but the parking is fine.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the parking, as long as the property owners are aware that they're parking on the prom. And someday, we will have a trail through there. Like the one that's up by the cross, where there's supposed to be a trail back through there, and there's like a little path. You probably haven't even been on that, we'll just take you on that. Number 12. I have no problem with access and parking, but I don't want any permanent improvements in this. They should not be paving the driveway with paver stones. To me, that's kind of permanent.
I don't like the parking on this one. I would be not in support of permitting that. I mean, they've put in the hollow grid pavers on here and are effectively parking on the bluff.
Yep, they are.
I can't support that.
Did we receive any communication with these folks? Oh, below, yes.
Yes, we
sorry.
did.
I've read this so many times. I talked to them when we were out walking.
Yes, I recall. Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, I remember when they went through their remodel, so even if it was built in 1945, it's got new construction on it. Thoughts? I don't remember where this picture shows I'm pretty sure that's a Subaru. In my head, I can't quite remember where that was.
That's looking west.
So it says the landscaping to the west of the parking area is entirely on the promenade.
The back of this house was very close to the property line with the promenade. There was, that little alley was kind of, it's a public alley
Is
back
it
to
the
the
one
promenade.
that goes up the side? Yeah, okay.
Correct.
So they had.
It's almost like a little flag
And
lot
then
in
there
the
was a
back.
garage and a parking,
Correct.
Yep.
yeah,
On the side.
on the
Correct.
side.
Yep.
Okay, I know what you think. About you, Adam.
So I'm curious to hear from Commissioner Wilson why you don't support the parking on this one. Just because I'm personally trying to remember what
Yeah, I remember-
makes this one different
I
from the
remember we
others.
walked,
Because if it is like a substantial amount of land, then that's obviously something to consider. So I would like to be reminded.
Yeah, and transparently, I wasn't a big fan of the parking on the units that we were just talking
Right.
about.
and they had a car parked next to the garage.
Yeah.
On the,
Now,
what street is that on the side? It's not an alley, it's,
is the difference, and I think I figured out what the difference is in my mind. The difference is the gravel driveway that exists on the other location, we put there. This gravel driveway,
They put it.
they
They
put
put
there.
there, right.
And this is an area
As
that-
far as I know. I don't know
Yeah,
that
right
to be
away.
fact, but
It
I
was-
think that's what I've
It
always.
it was not there.
Right, I mean, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Whether the city put something in there that opened the door to them parking, or they themselves put it there to park.
Okay.
Well, you know, they did go through historic review, but that didn't have anything to do with all that other stuff. That was, and I think it was brought up at the time, like, isn't this house like right on the property line?
So I guess the other issue, I mean, this is one that you're gonna have to, I think, make a deal. And what I mean by that is by taking away the parking, which is in the park, I'm not sure I'm willing to go to the extent of tearing out the pathway, even though we could.
You mean, it runs right along, that's
Yeah, because
the
that's-
property line.
Well, I thought the property line was right at the steps, and
It
that
is.
pathway,
It is.
pathway's in the park as well.
It is.
I mean, if they give up the parking, having that pathway from the side driveway to the stairs is okay
Are
with me.
you trying to pull up the map? Yeah, I remember, you might have been ahead of us because you and I were behind and we walked up that. And you were saying, this is a deed. We looked at the property across the street and the alley continues from that side to that side.
Well, and then the other question was, is it not that entire driveway right away?
The driveway, yes, going up to the side, but again, there's a garage there and then there's a place to park on the, next to the garage.
Because I don't think, I think the driveway's ours too, all the way up.
One, I'm not sure an agreement would even be needed, again, for the reasons that I have stated before.
Sorry, say that again.
Oh, okay, so I appreciate the refreshing of
Yeah.
my memory because this has been a lot. So yeah, I would agree with the no parking, but as it relates to the path, I'm not sure that an agreement is needed simply because it's subject to recreational immunity.
Just to be clear, we're talking about in these photos, the paver stones that are
the paver
directly
stones.
on the, against the house, right? Okay.
Can I ask
Yes.
a clarifying question?
Please.
What is the alternative other than a letter and agreement? The removal?
Of the path?
Either the driveway or the path.
I mean, my personal feelings are if they put in these hollow pavers in the city property, they need to take them out. I'm just being very transparent. That's my personal feelings. Because this is
Light show.
a pretty substantial encroachment into the promenade for personal use. And it doesn't feel good to me. And it's taking away a chunk of accessible park for the public.
Just a little path?
No, like where all the parking is.
Now,
Like,
we
'cause
need
it's
to
a,
get
That's not,
Need to get
I
the
mean, that's
puppies
just
out
gravel.
there.
what's that?
It's just gravel.
It's
Or did they
gravel
put-
with
Okay, see
plastic
where-
hollow.
See where the car is,
Yeah,
the blue
it's
car?
all of that.
Oh, that's changed since this picture.
That's what I'm saying. That's,
Yeah, I agree with you.
yeah, that's,
It's part of the street.
Yeah, that's way,
so
Gravel that became pavers.
now, but who paved that?
I'm assuming the property owners.
I
But
think they
how
have,
do they pave our street?
Well, it's not paved, right?
No,
it's-
that's paved,
where it
Promenade
says
Street.
promenade, that's gray,
We
that's
didn't
not
pave
pavers.
that.
No, yeah, the promenade has been improved.
Yeah.
Right, but we didn't do that, did we?
No, well, no, I'm sure they probably, I'd have to go check.
So we allow people to pave on our property?
They had,
Well, if they had to get access.
they had to do something. I recall going to the public hearing and they had, basically, there was the street right-of-way and everybody has to have an access to a property. So I'm sure Public Works said, in order for 118 to have access,
Did they extend, so that
just go up there and point to it. if you-
yeah, I guess. Okay, so the path that we're seeing on the corner
Next to the house.
here, is it not that? Because now on that picture, it continues beyond. I thought this was on that side.
Why does it look like there's 4 squares and then a line of squares where the white car is?
That's the,
So
I think
that's
that's the
the
paver
pavers.
system that was put down.
See, yep. I know that, I
I'm
know
just
that
trying to
was turned
make
in
it
because
fit with
there was a
this.
big pile of
That's the
pavers the
same,
last
yes,
time I walked
that's
through
the
there and I
corner.
said, don't put that in there.
So that, the picture you have on your sheet is the west side of the house.
But see, this picture here goes beyond the front stairs. That one does not. So what we're seeing in that picture is this one.
It's going.
Is that,
The trees go.
Okay.
An entrance.
so in this
Okay,
picture,
so
they
that
have
path is
pavers
in their
piled up
property,
there.
according to that. Sorry. Okay.
Part of it.
Well, yeah, the rest of it needs to go.
Yeah, and I mean, it feels like annexing part of the park for your own.
All right, you've got
parking.
consensus.
I'm sorry, to do what?
It's got to go.
I want them to remove the pavers.
They want it to be removed. It's not, they didn't ask for permission to do it, and it's what I hear you guys saying. So where the side, and this is the current picture,
This was the 24 picture, 24 aerial, I believe.
2024?
Yes.
And then this picture we have right here, and this picture was, because it's not, there's no pavers there.
I know, so when did we start? Alex, when did we start this?
So you think in a year, the pavers got put down while we were in this process of doing
I
this?
think they did.
Yes,
I think they
probably.
did.
Yeah,
Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah.
So when we look at the 23 pictures, there's no pavers. When we go to the 24 pictures, the pavers are in.
Okay, well, you got consensus, so that's what's happening.
Oh, you're okay too?
so, sorry, what is?
It was
like,
to
You guys,
have them remove the pavers and not use that area for parking,
Okay, and then a letter for the path.
for the, yeah,
In
for
front of
the
the- okay.
landscaping.
To me, it looks like the path is in
Yeah.
there. Property up there, it does.
that is really disappointing.
Yeah, so it may just be the parking.
Yeah.
This gets to a larger question, which we can get to later, but I just want to say it now, which is, it doesn't matter whether it's fully acknowledged or not, so long as the public doesn't realize that it's still theirs to access and it isn't denoted clearly for them, whether that be through landscaping or signage, that it is in fact a part of the park. So I just hope that, again, this isn't for right now, but down the road, when we've hopefully finished up with these, that we can have a broader conversation about like larger pieces of land like this, that we could hopefully do some improvements on, so it's clearer to people that this is a part of the park that they can access.
And I think we need to have some signage on some of these streets that access the promenade saying access.
Public
the promenade
access,
Yeah,
yeah.
this way.
because that should be, that's a
Yeah.
public right of way to get to the park,
Scott's-
absolutely.
Did you hear that? I think, some signage, because we did that with the East Bank Esplanade. We produced these nice little signs saying, this way to the Esplanade, this way to, so that,
Just like the beach access signs.
yeah, this beach access.
That
And you-
alone will help people start realizing what is,
And you might be walking by somebody's house, but it's,
Right.
the street there, that is a public right of way.
yep.
It's not a private driveway. I've walked up there. All right, number 13. They are here. So basically, it's parking.
Where is?
Okay, this is one where the road starts going way out, right?
Yeah, so this, yep, and the blue house next to it, we had them, we were allowing the parking and then they had the stair encroachment, but we were gonna have them remove the debris.
Yeah, they don't have any debris back here.
Right, so are we back into allowing the parking and the access via letter?
Was there an issue with the fence? I thought when we were walking that there might have been an issue with the fence. I recall from my notes.
We didn't, I think it's right on the I think we referenced the fence is right on the property
property line,
line, so
okay.
it gave you some idea, because as you look down the property line, you could see where some of the fences, or where some of the stairs came out. It was more of a reference point.
As long as the understanding of liability is there via letter, I'm fine with continuing the parking access.
You can just nod. Are you all right with a letter? Just nod. So that means you can't store anything back there. You can use it for parking. We're going to send you a letter. So, okay with that? Okay.
So just for the record, this is another, I'm just not a fan of parking on the
I
promenade,
agree.
especially when there's access from.
Yes, they have
High Street.
access on High Street,
So that's where
which
I'm
is
at, is
where we
why,
would prefer them to park.
which is my question of why, if there's alternative parking, why are we parking on the promenade?
Well, we just did that to the other piece of property. They said you have alternative parking, you can't park on the promenade. You bring up a point.
But for this one specifically, wasn't your point just now that the adjacent property, the blue, that we did decide that they can keep their parking? So I don't,
Yeah.
either we would allow it for both or
Yeah, so we
for
either
neither.
have to take away the blue houses parking, which does not have access on High Street. So, thoughts? So on this one, it's either we allow the parking for both or we don't.
My personal opinion is not allowing parking.
I think, the homes along here, they all have access other than Bluff Street, right?
I don't think the blue, isn't there a house in front of the blue one on High
But
Street?
it's a little flag lot.
Oh, it's a flag lot.
Yeah, because
Okay.
that's one of the things that when we were walking back, and even, again, all those, the smaller homes by the water tower, all of them have access from High Street. And so that's why, from the beginning, if you have access from the street, that's where you should be parking, not in the promenade.
I think the one on the end, I don't think you can get to the house from High Street.
I could be wrong.
I thought there was it was constrained.
I think from the looks of it, looked like it was designed almost like how we do cluster housing.
Sure, yeah.
Right, where folks would come in, and then these, there was supposed to be access parallel to High Street, but internal to the houses.
That's right.
And there were steps up, right? But those two on the corner, there was pretty significant elevation change.
That's what I was recalling.
Up to the front porches.
But what about 114 and 1?
Same thing. I think when this was probably originally
Oh,
designed.
there's a car right there.
You came in off High
Street.
Street, and then it was like a T in here,
Right.
right? To get access to all these 116, 114, 112, 110. And then just eventually, it looks like they started coming in the back. I know there was some access ADA.
You made me change my mind.
It certainly hasn't been kept
Oh, heck no, it has
for
not been kept
access
up.
the way it was probably designed.
Yeah, because that's one of the things, when we were looking, that I specifically looked at was, could I find a property that did not have access from High Street? And I was not aware of any.
And then, yeah, next to 111 High, there's a sidewalk that continues all the way back to 110 High. I mean, they were designed that way originally.
Yeah,
I mean, it looks like
they were little
little cottages.
cottages designed for the people who worked at the mill.
Yep.
Commissioner Wilson raises a very good point. Can you come up for a moment and I can ask you the dumb question? Why don't you use the High Street for your access to your house? Because that's where your front door is. This is, say your name, just.
Josh.
Yeah.
Josh Adams, Oregon City. Most of it's because of the parking for the apartments next door.
They park in
pretty
front of your
much-
house?
Yeah, absolutely. And we also upkeep the area where that parking is. The parks do not.
Because there's usually cars parked on it, so I don't know if they can get there.
No, when it's
Yeah,
vacant,
vacant.
they don't mow all the way to the fence, which is right at the property line.
Okay, well, maybe we need to tell them to mow it to the fence. Okay. Does that help?
I mean, it provides context, but it
Okay,
hasn't
that's what I mean,
changed.
provides context, okay. So we have one contrary, are we still leaving the parking? Rocky, Adam?
I'm still fine leaving the parking on this one, but I would suggest that if the majority decision or majority direction is to remove it, then to remove it for the other one as well.
You get to be the decider. Well, we're not deciding, you have to be the
We don't
consensus
decide.
person.
I mean, how are we not, I don't get this whole meeting, honestly. Because that's exactly what we're doing, is making decisions, and we're not to make
We're not,
decisions.
we're giving consensus and direction to staff, then
What's
we'll
the
come back
difference?
with a decision. We're giving them direction.
Yeah, we're gonna have to bring some of this back.
So are you supportive of continuing to keep the parking?
I'll make a decision when it comes to us.
Okay. Number 14. Was this one of the properties where we didn't hear from anybody? This was part of our tour. I
No, we
believe.
did hear from this owner.
Pardon?
We did hear from this
Oh,
owner.
we did, okay,
Yes.
perfect. Makes me feel good.
This one had a pretty significant landscaped area in the back, pretty hard to get to, steep area above the Museum of the Oregon Territory. I'm not even sure we made it all the way over there. I think we looked at it. It was a lot of blackberries.
Yeah, there were too many blackberries. When we did this tour before, we were able to get over there. But because they've grown up more, we were not able to get over there. Well, I have a problem with the rock walls, for one. The ornamental landscaping, it's not any worse or better than what they have at the Ladderette House or at the, at 524 High and 515 High. But at least there's roadies, there's not kind of arborvitae type plants, which are not my favorite. I just have a problem with this being given the appearance that this is private property, and it's not. That's my problem with it. what was their, did they submit a letter? I don't see one attached. Or did they just contact you?
They contacted me with a very long list of questions. We responded and answered those questions, and he refused to sign the agreement, and that was the last we heard from him.
All right, what is the consensus?
Well, again, for me, it gets back to how do we make sure that it's maintained if we insist that it stays, but that it's also public? Same as the other property.
And what, we talked about these, to put some vines in? What kind of vines are they?
I don't think we know exactly.
Yeah, I don't think we have that specific information.
What?
I don't think we have that specific information as to what exactly the type of vine is he put in.
And so where is their property line? Is all the landscaping that I can see in this small picture, that's all on Promenade?
Correct.
And where's the house?
So,
If you go to the McLaughlin Promenade tour,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got that one here.
no, we didn't include that.
Okay, so go to the tour, all right.
No, we didn't. We'd have to go back. We'd have to go back and get the survey and load it up. We don't. Survey picture's not on that one.
Yeah, we don't have that one. Can we just pause this one? Because I can't picture where the house is in my head. I know that the promenade goes across this stuff right here, where the blackberries and I don't know what else is over there. Yes, it's the very far end, yeah.
So are we skipping this one?
Well, oh, okay. It's 127?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, okay, now it's ringing a bell. So they got like a whole lawn area?
oh, that's part of the promenade too? Yeah, I saw that.
Yep. That's a lot.
127.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
But it's really hard to access in the current condition out there.
My suggestion is we put this one on hold for the time being. I think it's important that we've got a picture of it, but if we can get there, go out and look at it. What are your thoughts?
I just feel that on this one, given how substantial the encroachment is, that until such time that it is in such disrepair and has not been maintained by the owners, assuming we send them a letter and say that this is our property and they decide not to maintain it, then whenever the time comes where it's clearly in disrepair and not being maintained, then maybe we can do something to make it clearer that it's a part of the park.
How would we even access that? I don't even know how you,
We walked back
I
there.
would imagine
I don't know.
those, the cottage houses that are right next
I
door.
thought we tried to walk up right there.
I think,
Yeah.
Sorry, so I walked through what, if you look at the cottage houses, 110, 12, 14, 16, I was walking through what they're using as their backyard, which is in all reality the promenade.
Right.
And you can get back there that way. But it would, again, all of it right now feels very much like private property because we've got like fire pits and lawn chairs and landscaping done in a way
a lot
that kind of
of
separates it out.
blackberries that make it a
Blackberries,
little bit
yeah.
difficult to.
But were that to be landscaped differently,
And a path put in.
and a path put in, it would be accessible.
I'm totally against fire pits. They cannot have any fire pits. They want to have a fire pit in their front yard. Cannot have any fire pits in the promenade. I just am so freaked out about fire danger. I don't care how safe people say they are, it's fire.
We need to consider doing something to open that up.
Yeah.
And make it clear that's part of the park, because the more we ignore that, that is a very crucial piece. We can say, well, it's hard to get through now, but that's the connection, right, to Moot and connection to Kanema through the promenade. I mean, that's, whether it's a stairway that goes through there after a path through there, I mean, that's the connection that's gonna take you down to the sidewalk
Does
around
that get
Moot.
us to the steps that go down to the, let's say there's a real path?
Well, there's no
Those are-
steps
those are
there now.
south.
No, I mean the
Those are
steps
south
that
of
go
theirs.
down to the VFWs. You come across there, can you get down that way?
Well, this property is south of that.
It's south of
So I
it,
think what
okay.
Rocky's
You
saying,
could
it'd
go
be
down
at
the
the
steps
curve.
at VFW and go through there, but what I'm saying is, eventually, if you go through those backyards, you would go down another pathway to the sidewalk that would lead you over to Moot and then to Stillhouse and then possibly into Kanema.
But I don't think that the promenade doesn't extend to the back part of Mood. That doesn't go over there. I mean, that's
It
like,
extends to the street.
yeah, to the
that
street,
Moot's
but I mean,
on.
Mood is here and the cliff is like, and then you're
Well,
looking
there'd
down
probably be a staircase there
And you're
that would
looking
take you
down at
down to
the-
the sidewalk and then you cross the street.
at 99E and putting your life in danger.
You
So-
wouldn't be going across 99, you could be going
Maybe
through
that's a
Kanema
project for the
Park.
Oregon City
It
Parks
would
Foundation to have
connect, it
a
would connect down to Tumwater Drive.
Tumwater. That's what I'm
That's
thinking,
exactly-
Tumwater Street, yeah,
That's what I just said.
yeah. You said the street, I was trying to get the street in my head, sorry.
So I would suggest just going ahead with the letter like the others. They don't have to acknowledge it on their end.
No.
But until such a time comes where we can decide how we want to fund certain improvements along the promenade to make it clear that that's public park property, I would suggest just leaving it in. If they maintain it until that time
Well,
comes,
and
then
they-
that's great. And
we
if
don't want any
not,
more stuff put in there.
Yeah, that would be my question for all of the properties
Weird
is,
landscaping, I mean,
no
maybe
additional
it looks nice,
improvements.
but it's not native landscaping that fits in with the rest of the promenade and. Yeah, I think
I'm sorry, what?
No new improvements.
yeah, I would say no new improvements.
Yeah, of
Other
course.
than that, I agree with what
Of
you're
course.
saying.
And I look at this one differently than the other community garden, just given the footprint of this one, so. And I do think that when we have that following conversation about improvements, that we can look at ways to ease into that other garden property, that landscapes property that we were talking about, to make it clear that that is also public, but.
Well, I could foresee a community project where you go in with your weed whackers and you put in an unimproved path, get the blackberries down so that you can walk through there.
Yeah, so if they want to maintain it until that point, then great, and if not,
Then we'll go in and maintain.
then we will do that, and we'll have a broader discussion about how to make it fit in.
Okay.
Get some trail pack rats and clear it like they do in the Forest Service. They make trails all the time.
So interesting question here. So 15, minor encroachment, half a foot roughly. For a fence, they signed the encroachment license agreement.
Okay, we just move forward with the ones that are signed.
Okay, so don't rescind them and just send them a
No,
letter?
No, we just, the ones that signed, let's thank them and move forward and get it taken care of.
Okay, so that's 15 and 16. On to 17. Landscaped area. On the slope. Retaining wall, rock wall, didn't propose to remove anything.
What about all those rocks on number 15? What? Oh, they signed the agreement?
We're at 17.
Oh, sorry.
So I assume we're back to a letter. This is primarily a landscaped area.
Yeah, okay, yeah, 17, yeah, that's where we had the fire. That was scary.
I would just suggest something similar to the last one. Come up with a way to make it blend in better with the surroundings, but until such a time comes, they can choose to maintain it or not, and they can be made aware that it is our property.
So you can walk around.
All right.
That was easy.
So we're, yeah, is on number 15, just let me ask a question, is where I see I can see sort of a red line. So I can see that where it looks like it's not really grass, but it's something. That's the property line. I can see just very faintly a red line going around this piece of property.
That's the lot, so.
That's the lot, okay. So it's the fence, yeah, okay,
It's just the
perfect. That's
fence.
what I thought. I was just, yeah.
So when this comes back to us at a regular meeting for a vote, I think it would still be good for a presentation of some sort to go, this is what the final, just a very quick, this is what the final, or not the final decision, but what the last
This was what the
consensus was
Yes, this was
at the work
consensus.
session.
Yes.
Just so that we have that fresh in our minds when we're taking that vote. And I also think it would be helpful, because there are some properties listed that have aerials and some that do not, so I would just ask that we get that, because that would be helpful.
Getting aerials for all of them. We probably already have them, so.
Well, yeah, we can look them up on maps right now, but just to have them,
Almost like a one-sheeter.
yes,
Yeah.
that would be helpful.
Yeah. Alex, thank you. I know this was not, we knew that it was going to be difficult, but I appreciate particularly your persistence in trying to get a hold of people. That's really important. And I'm just sorry that people didn't have the courtesy to respond. However they responded, zero response. Again, it's disappointing. All right, so we have future work session items.
So, for July 8th, we were asked to bring back DEI. So this is the community DEI task force discussion. Currently, it's set up at task force. That DEI group asked that it be made more like an official committee. So we're going to bring that back for discussion. Still trying to work with Confederate Tribe of Grand Ronde, so we may slide something else in here if we can't find a time that works for them on that date. Trying to work around, trying to use existing commission dates when we're available.
If we decide on that time, would they be coming here?
Still working on it.
Okay.
We've both offered.
They asked for us to come there. That was the last communication I had.
Okay.
And I said, we need to set a date and get enough advance notice so that people who are employed can make accommodation.
All right. Any questions on that one? Okay. Want me to to the next one?
Yes, please.
All right. Not too many updates on this. So the city projects that we probably haven't talked about. We still continue to work with the consultant for the relocation of Center Street. As I said last time, we have funded for the decant facility as well as our winter weather response material that's over at Center. So we're getting that, working on with the consultant for primarily the relocation and design of the decant facility up at Mountain View. Nothing new on the quiet zone. Continue to work with ODOT on trying to come up with 60% drawings and a refined cost estimate. Don't think we need to talk about charter parks. Just work through that. No update yet on Cayuse 5 or any discussions between the Confederate Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation and the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde.
Have we had any communication with the Umatilla?
They canceled last time just because there was nothing new that they had. They're still working on discussions with Grand Ronde.
Okay.
So primarily that's where we're at with that project. The courthouse, the county commission received one proposal for the downtown corridors redevelopment, and we'll be moving forward with drafting an agreement for the sale and disposition of the property.
I understand they're in discussions. That's
Yep.
what I heard from the chamber director today.
Try to negotiate some agreement. For Tumwater Village, the police department worked with the Confederate Tribe of Grand Ronde to remove the homeless camp that we received public testimony on a couple weeks ago. And then demolition of the buildings continues in response to the fire. Nothing new for Kenema.
Okie dokie. Does anybody have anything they want to report on 5?
Yes, I do.
Fantastic.
Quick, so the Destination Oregon City DMMO met on May 19th. They are in the process of going forward for the search for a executive director. At that meeting, they were finalizing the job description timeline, and since then, I think it's been posted, or it's at least in the process of being posted. I think it's already been posted.
Can we get an informational copy of that?
Yeah.
I'd like to see that.
That meeting, there was a couple topics on the agenda that meeting that immediately followed our meeting of giving or making the decision to do the $900 for the Rose Parade. So I came into the DMO meeting and they were asking questions like, where did that money come from the commission? And did that come out of our money? Meaning, did it come out of the DMO money? And I said, well, no, it didn't. You're funded through the transient room tax. You're not funded by all of the transient room tax, and there is other transient room tax that we still control, and that's where the money came in. So that spurred the discussion of one that we've had multiple times about grants and whether or not grants are gonna be under the guise of the new DMO. I've told them the answer is no at this point and probably for the foreseeable future, but that there still has to be some process probably of the city dealing with grants or events or various other things through tourism, and that's a conversation that this commission still has to have and move forward, so that's still something I couldn't specifically answer. So that cleared up a lot of things. Well, it cleared up a lot of things, but still left things open, which is fine. I was asking questions about the branding, and I got my answer that I needed, which was helpful in that the question that I was asking is if we've spent all this money for the Travel Oregon City brand and the Travel Oregon City website, and yet we've created this new organization that's named something different. Is that confusing? And how are they actually going about that? And all of that. And so the way it sounds is we've we're letting them use the Marketing and Travel Oregon City website. So essentially, they're doing business as Travel Oregon City, even though it's Destination Oregon City Incorporated. And at some time, once they hire an executive director in the future, if they decide to rebrand or to do their own thing and break away from our brand
I thought
name.
everybody was going to be under the Travel Oregon City umbrella.
Well,
We're not
I don't know that.
reinventing the wheel.
I don't know that that's ever been talked
Oh,
about.
okay.
That was
I'm
my
just-
question
just-
from the
just
beginning. Right
asking a
now,
question.
they're going to use that. That doesn't mean that they might want to change it in the future. That would be a discussion that would come back to us and in the future. Okay, I think that's the basics of that. The other meeting, I had a meeting yesterday, Clackamas Heritage Partners at the end of the Oregon Trail. A lot going on there. We talked about the possibility and the work that's been done from the board and the executive director on moving forward on doing some improvements and some maintenance to the end of the Oregon Trail building. That plan was to have the hoops cleaned and repainted. That is still happening, but that's been delayed. And so I think that's going to be that was hopefully happening over the summer. There's some things that happened that delayed that. It's still in line to be done fallish. The Curtis Heritage Education Center had an auction. The Curtis family decided to sell off the wagon collections, which is just heartbreaking. Over 100 wagons. There is good news in the situation. Those wagons were mostly sold off Friday and Saturday. Clackamas Heritage Partners and the Oregon Trail has been working with the Curtis Heritage Education Center to take on part of the collection and to work towards a plan to build some facilities to store the wagons at the end of the Oregon Trail. There's a couple of wagons already being stored at the end of the Oregon Trail. But since the collection had been sold off with the exception of the 2025 wagons that had been set aside for Clackamas Heritage Partners, those wagons that have been handed over to the CHP are in city storage and are in city storage through Tony, our city manager and Public Works, and will be in storage as of, right now the agreement is a year and that could be revisited after a year. I don't want to say where they're stored just because.
No, do not say that.
The question about that?
Yeah, so I was aware that they were interested in some wagons. What is the significance of 20 wagons? Are they planning to make like a wagon train or, I don't know, I'm just asking a dumb question. I
Yeah.
would think that maybe, 5 wagons would be representative of the period. I mean, I've been to Czech's facility, so I've seen a lot of their wagons and all their stuff, and I mean, there was a lot of stuff in there.
Well, I don't know I don't know how that got narrowed down to that. I know there is a plan to account for the storage. There is storage within the current end of the Oregon Trail building to store several of them on exhibit just in the front store. There's one in the visitor center now already. There's a sleigh in there. So within the current capacity of the end of the Oregon Trail, there was the ability to store some. The plan of the future at Clackamas Heritage Partners to expand the children or to expand the youth visits and school group visits, which has been a huge focus, is to utilize the back of the building more than we have. The current executive director had been working on the past executive director had worked a long time on trying to figure out how to use that back around the center with a path more usable. They created exhibits in the back of the building. So the next step was to realize that some of the decking on the back of the building that is level to the building, but has emptiness underneath it.
It's cantilevered.
If we're going to have to replace the decking, is there a way to replace that decking that creates a permanent cover and be able to enclose some of the rear of the building to store wagons? That would add to the mission of the Curtis Education Center, which is dissolving, and how that would merge into Clackamas Heritage Partners. So there is a plan. Yes, that's going to cost money, and yes, that's an investment. The Clackamas Heritage Partners has seed money already, knowing that there is coming, and some that they're expected from both donation and grants to have the seed money to start the design and the beginning construction process of building the spaces for the wagons. I know that they're working with the city to some degree on that. I guess I'll end that there. There is, with some of the connections that were made at the auction and some of the wagons that we now have ownership of, Clackamas Heritage Partners is working with the city to make sure it is legal and available to do wagon rides from the end of the Oregon Trail down Main Street with various carriages, and so that's something that they're working with city staff on. There was a reward given for our financial report, so that just happened recently. There is a renewed focus from the end of the Oregon Trail and the other heritage sites to work together, partly because of the conversations with the Oregon Heritage Coordinating Committee and the issues with the parade, but also how to work better, which is kind of revisiting the umbrella of the Clackamas Heritage Partners' original, guise, which was to kind of oversee all these entities, but we know that didn't work. So how do all these entities work together? They are working together better than they have. I think that sets the stage for where does that go in the future with those organizations and the DMLO? Does that somehow, that's a big question, how those are gonna all work together. Some big events coming up. June 17th is the 30th anniversary of the end of the Oregon Trail. I can say I've been part of it since the beginning. That was one of my first jobs in the Oregon Trail when they opened. So they are having a community picnic. There'll be some speakers at about 4:30 at the end of the Oregon Trail, followed by a community picnic at 5:30. That's on
Could you
June
clarify
17th.
that celebrating the anniversary of the creation of the end of the Oregon Trail?
The building, the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center is 30 years old.
Right, because it first started in the basement of the Pioneer Community Center.
True. I think that 30 years is just end of the Oregon Trail at its current site.
Current site, okay. Well, it should be the whole.
Because I'm celebrating my 30th class reunion, and I started working at the end of the Oregon Trail in 95. So
Well,
that's
remember I
just
showed
the
you those
30
pictures
years,
of
just the
Governor-
30 years that the,
I showed him some pictures of Governor
Kelly
Ortiz
Field.
dedicating the end of the Oregon Trail.
yeah, it's not that.
And that was in the basement of the Pioneer
Yep.
Community Center. It was the very first where that entity existed.
The only other thing is June 21st will be the Juneteenth celebration at End of the Oregon Trail, and that's a partnership between the library and the city and the Oregon Trail. And that's at 2 o'clock on the 21st.
And apparently Hannah's having an ivy pull that morning at Waterford Park on the
Okay.
21st.
I think that's it from those two meetings. South Fork, I'll let someone else talk about, but I think we had a pretty basic meeting at South Fork.
We adopted
Just
the
so
budget.
everyone's aware, I also talked
Yeah,
with Corinne
did I-
about using the R wagon that's been in storage
Oh, I
forever.
did mention that, yes.
Is going to be part of the collection, hopefully for
Yeah.
display, as well as we've offered up to be able to use our resources to pull it around for, if for city celebration, wherever it ends
yeah.
up.
But it's still gonna be our wagon.
I think we just,
On loan, I think, or what?
No, yeah, it's going to be our wagon.
Yeah.
It's just more of
Yeah.
incorporating it into the display.
So it's been in storage as well for a
As long
while.
as I've been here.
The tires on the trailer are flat.
I haven't seen it since we had the walk-in with the wagons. That's the last time I saw
Well,
it.
we had it at Pioneer Festival almost every year.
Well, yeah, but I thought
That's
that came
been
from Czech.
still
I thought that
a
was
while.
Don Scott
Oh, no.
brought a
that was
wagon.
our
Was
city
that our wagon?
yeah.
Okay, well then I've seen it
Yeah.
at the first city festival.
But it's been a while,
Yeah.
so that's cool. All
We
right,
didn't
that's
have it for there was no wagon there the last 2 years for First City. I do have a request. I am the alternate to Rocky for the Clackamas Heritage Partners, so I get notified of the meeting, so if for some reason he can't attend, I know that I need to like step up. I am not getting anything on the DMMO, and I'm the alternate. So in case he can't come, I need to know when the meetings are so that I can track that
Yeah,
in case I need to attend, because you're going to be on vacation at some point in
Yeah.
time, and I just can't.
Hopefully someday.
Yeah, someday you're going to go on vacation.
The next DMMO meeting is same Monday night, same as our
Enhancement.
Metro enhancement. So
Okay.
if you, so that'll be at the same location just before Metro enhancement.
So it's going to be,
At
we're
City
meeting
Hall.
at 6, I believe, for
Yeah, and
enhancement.
the DMMO is meeting at, I don't know, 4, maybe 3 o'clock?
3?
3 o'clock, 3 to 6, or 3 to, 3 to 4.
Well, I have
3 to
nothing
5.
else to do with my time. I'll just go to that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just need to know when the meetings are so that I can keep track of that and whatever they're sending, so I can at least make the attempt to scan it, because I scan all the EOT stuff.
I'll take a few days off.
Yeah, it's easier said than done. I left home and I came home to change clothes, and that's the only time I've been home today. So, okay, 3 PM on the 16th, is that Monday, or is it the night? Whatever day that is, Monday. Okay, I got it.
So I'm just going to go, youth advisory, we had last night, and we sadly had to say goodbye to our seniors.
It was sad.
And then next year, the seniors for next year are going to be the final class who was there from the very beginning. So it's crazy to think of how much it has grown and turned into what it is today. And I've really appreciated having the opportunity to speak with them about what they would like to see it turn into and how they've seen it grow as they've been a part of it. And so they filled out a survey, and now we're on our break until the school year begins. And so we will be back at it in September. And then the only other thing I wanted to highlight is that at C4, we approved a letter ranking our priorities for the Regional Flexible Fund Allocation Program, which is more or less run through Metro, and they funnel the federal funds. And I was actually under the impression that we were not going to be included, but the third priority item was the 9090 McLoughlin enhancement. So
What happened to the Sunrise Corridor?
that's what I was told, but we approved a letter that said the opposite. So if they screwed up, then it's all to our benefit.
It's in the letter or not in the letter?
It is in the letter.
So what happened to the Sunrise Corridor?
Well,
Is that in the letter?
just pulling it up, sorry.
I don't expect you to have it committed to memory.
So number one, so these are the rankings to JPACT, and this is from the coordinating committee for the Regional Flexible Fund Allocation. Number one, Gladstone Historic Trolley Trail Bridge construction. Number two, Milwaukee Railroad Avenue Multi-Use Path Project Development. And number three, Oregon City, Oregon 99E McLoughlin Boulevard, 10th Street to Tumwater Village Project Development.
Thank you.
So we are on that letter.
Yay. Well, we kind of talked to several people in Salem about that as well.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just the one thing I'll update you on regarding the Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County is, they're at the point of looking at a groundbreaking for the Caring Place coming up September 8th. So they're underway with getting that rolling. Thank you.
Sorry. It's past the point of no return already today. The Arts Commission has been meeting on a fairly regular basis. There's an event this Saturday at the IOOF Hall upstairs. There are negotiations with an artist to fix the bench that is over by Mike's Drive-In, and I hope that gets resolved. Clackamas Water Environmental Services, we had a budget meeting with the county commissioners 2 weeks ago, and the budget was approved. And I think I mentioned before that there is a reduction in the SDC fees for everybody, which is good because they're pretty high. As usual, there were no questions by the commissioners on the budget, so I asked a bunch of questions that I hadn't pre-approved with them, but I asked questions about different programs that they were supporting and how that affected the jurisdictions. Downtown Oregon City Association, we meet on Friday, not this Friday, but the following Friday. We've been conducting interviews of potential candidates for the board, and I have another one next week, had 2 already. Impact, the only thing I need to bring to your attention is that we were reviewing some transportation proposals, and I am very disappointed that once again, the regional money seems to be getting sucked into streetcar. And so there's a proposal to put streetcar to, those of you who know where the old Montgomery Wards was, it's Montgomery Park. They're talking about redeveloping that and spending a whole bunch of money. And I plan to say that I think that priority is not appropriate given the state of transportation in the metro area, and that money needs to be allocated to jurisdictions where we have transportation constraints. South Fork Water Board, the AWWA conference is happening right now in Denver, Colorado, and Mike is attending on our behalf. Rocky and I are not attending this time, and the full City of West Lynn staff members are attending. So we'll see how that goes. Willamette Falls Landings Heritage Area had the support of the Clackamas City's dinner, and I was glad to see that we all went. And let's just say that that wasn't our typical meeting, and it was quite interesting that it was not our typical meeting where we highlighted what West Lynn was doing. Instead, we had a dog and pony show by the Willamette Falls Trust with a number of historical inaccuracies. You're laughing. Well, I got called on. I mean, she put me on the spot and asked me if Oregon City was incorporated in 1829, and I said nope. So anyway, yes. Well, it was established in 29, not incorporated in 29. There has been no update on the legacy project liaisons, even though we have asked, but I'm sure you all received it. There is a invitation to the Yakima Nation is going to be doing their Lamprey Festival again. It's going to be down have they even applied for anything through us for the park? Because I said, by the way, make sure you get your permits for Clackamas Park. Okay, and I believe that's going to be on, trying to remember now, wrote it down. Anyway, so we're all invited, and I was hoping that maybe we could have a minimal city presence there, which would be nice. Locks Authority, we've been to Salem several times to make sure that we have the allocation for the $11 million request for lottery bonds to complete the construction. The Corps is this close from finishing their part, and then they will be working with us to turn over the locks. And that's going to be very exciting, but there's still more improvements that need to be made. So the goal is, given the request for funds, they plan to open it in 2027, which will be very exciting. But what I'm concerned about is that there is a Christmas tree bill out there. You have any idea where that's going? There was a $75 million ask by the Willamette Falls Trust, just out of the ether. And nobody on the Locks Authority is really supportive of that because we're concerned that you know, that money's getting pretty well divvied up. And then all of you are so excited to know that the transportation funding package was released yesterday. And if you really want to get put to sleep, please read it. It's very lengthy. There's been some outreach by a number of our Clackamas County legislators to the cities, particularly the mayors, asking us for our support. One of them was very pointed to me to say, by the way, Abernathy Bridge is still in there, no tolling, but the third lane seems to be absent, which was not what we were advocating for. But there also is a proposal for an audit. I don't know how detailed that audit is supposed to be, but I know that's something a number of people have been asking for, so I have to try to slog through it. And that's all I have. First City Festival's coming up, by the way. Oh, we all did receive a card from TNT Fireworks. I'm not really sure what that was really all about. So I have no idea, but so that was quite interesting. Anyway, anything else? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, staff. And thank you, Corey.